Hello everyone, and welcome to the Ben 10 What Ifs. So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Ben 10 merged with the Alien X. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. Chapter 1. Convergence. The sky shattered like obsidian glass. Ben 10 Nyssen crouched behind the smoldering remains of what had been a plumber transport vessel, the acrid smell of burnt alien alloys stinging his nostrils. His left arm hung useless at his side, dislocated during the initial assault. With his right, he frantically manipulated the Omnitrix, cycling through his arsenal of transformations with practiced precision. Come on, he muttered, green eyes reflecting the holographic display. Nothing suitable appeared. Heatblast would be overwhelmed, forearms lacked the necessary speed, XLR8 the required durability. Earth's atmosphere glowed an unnatural crimson above him, fracturing along invisible fault lines as the Chronosapien annihilation wave approached. Unlike Maltruant's original weapon, this modified version didn't erase timelines, it collapsed them, folding reality into a singularity that consumed everything in its path. Ben. Gwen's voice crackled through his communicator, distorted by the temporal interference. The evacuation's at 60%. We need at least 20 more minutes. He watched the wave's edge advancing inexorably toward Bellwood's outskirts. We don't have 20 minutes, Gwen. 3 miles away, Kevin and Rook coordinated the evacuation, loading civilians onto ships bound for plumber sanctuaries throughout the galaxy. Too many would be left behind. Too many already had been. Ben closed his eyes, his fingers hovering over the one transformation he'd sworn never to use except in the most desperate circumstances. The one with power beyond comprehension. The one he couldn't control. Alien X. The ground beneath him liquefied suddenly, molecules losing cohesion as reality began unraveling. Ben leapt backward, landing awkwardly and crying out as pain lanced through his dislocated shoulder. I'm sorry, Azimuth, he whispered, making his decision. The dial spun, stopping on a silhouette of a humanoid figure with 3 horns. Ben slammed his palm down on the Omnitrix. Celestial energy cascaded over him. The familiar green glow of transformation darkened to midnight black, shot through with pinpoints of starlight. Time stretched and contracted simultaneously as his consciousness expanded, dead beyond the boundaries of conventional space. And then, nothing. Ben found himself suspended in a void of absolute darkness. 2 green faces materialized before him, their expressions as impassive and cold as he remembered. Benjamin Tennyson, Bellicus, the voice of rage and aggression, intoned. You return to us in the moment of your species' extinction. The Chronosapien wave approaches, Serena. The voice of love and compassion, added. You seek our power to stop it. Yes, Ben answered, his voice echoing strangely in the cosmic void. I need to save Earth. The danger is of your own making, Bellicus countered, his massive face contorting with displeasure. Had you not interfered with Maltruant's original plan, this variation would never have been created. Motion denied, declared Bellicus. I second the denial, Serena said, surprising Ben. The consequences of intervening in temporal warfare extend beyond a single planet's fate. Ben's ethereal form trembled with frustration. Every second they debated, thousands died. There has to be a way. Something you'll agree to. A peculiar stillness fell over the void. Bellicus and Serena exchanged glances, communicating in ways Ben couldn't comprehend. There is one possibility, Serena finally offered. But the price is immeasurable. Name it, Ben said without hesitation. Permanent convergence, Bellicus rumbled. Not transformation, integration. What does that mean? Ben asked, though somewhere deep inside, he already understood. You would cease being merely human, Serena explained, her voice gentler than Ben had ever heard it. And we would cease being merely celestial sapien. The Omnitrix would not simply clothe you in our form, it would merge us on the fundamental level of existence. A new entity, Bellicus continued. Neither human nor celestial sapien, but something unprecedented. Has this ever been done before? Ben asked. Never, they answered in unison. The void arrow. Them shuddered as external reality began bleeding through. The Chronosapien wave had reached Bellwood's city limits. I'll do it, Ben said. Whatever it takes. Understand this, Benjamin Tennyson, Bellicus warned. There will be no returning to what you were. The Benjamin Tennyson who entered this transformation will cease to exist, Serena added. As will the celestial sapient entity you know as Alien X. Motion proposed. Ben stated firmly. Permanent convergence to save Earth from the chronosapient annihilation wave. Seconded. Serena whispered, her eyes reflecting something like sorrow. Motion. Bellicus paused, studying Ben with ancient eyes that had witnessed the birth and death of galaxies. Carried. The void imploded. Reality reasserted itself with violent force. Ben found himself kneeling in the same spot where he'd activated the Omnitrix, but everything had changed. His perception had expanded exponentially. He could simultaneously observe individual Saint particles floating in Bellwood's atmosphere and stellar formations in distant galaxies. Time appeared as visible threads weaving through space, including the crimson distortion of the approaching wave. His body felt both impossibly light and inconceivably dense. Looking down, Ben saw his human form overlaid with the star-flecked darkness of Alien X, constantly shifting and reconfiguring like oil and water refusing to mix. Most disorienting of all, he could hear Bellicus and Serena, not as external voices, but as aspects of his own consciousness, integrated yet distinct. The convergence is incomplete. Bellicus's voice resonated within his mind. Stabilize or perish. Focus, Ben, Serena urged. Accept what you are becoming. The chronosapient wave loomed less than a mile away, reality crumbling before it like sand castles before an advancing tide. Ben could see the quantum structure of the wave now, a cascading probability collapse forcing multiple timelines into a single point of destruction. Instinctively, he raised his hand. Gone was the pain from his dislocated shoulder. His body had reconfigured itself during the transformation. His palm, now shimmering with a mixture of human flesh and cosmic energy, directed itself toward the wave. I need to stop it, Ben thought. We need to unmake it, Bellicus corrected. We need to heal reality, Serena offered. Song. Ethan clicked into place. Not agreement, but synthesis. Three perspectives merging into a singular understanding. Ben felt power building within him, unfathomable energy channeled through a vessel never designed to contain it. He spoke a single word, his voice resonating with cosmic authority, no. Green light erupted from his extended hand, meeting the crimson wave at its leading edge. Where they touched, reality stabilized. The wave's destructive force encountering an immovable counterpoint. For a breathless moment, they balanced in perfect opposition. Then Ben pushed. The wave began receding, forced backward along its path by the sheer conceptual weight of Ben's denial. He wasn't merely countering its energy, he was rewriting its fundamental nature, transforming annihilation into preservation. More, Bellicus urged within him. Gentler, Serena cautioned. Ben drew deeply from both aspects, finding a middle path. The green energy flowing from him intensified, spreading toward in fractal patterns that mirrored the wave's structure while inverting its purpose. Where the chronosapient technology collapsed timelines, Ben's power expanded them, restoring possibilities that had been erased. Miles away, evacuees watched in awe as the blood-red sky gradually returned to blue, the horrifying cracks in reality sealing themselves like healing wounds. The oppressive pressure of imminent destruction lifted, replaced by a palpable sense of renewal. Ben felt the moment when the last echo of the wave dissipated. The power flowing through him didn't diminish, instead, it turned inward, seeking equilibrium within his transformed being. The effort of controlling such vast energy sent him staggering backward, falling to his knees as his perceptions fluctuated wildly between cosmic awareness and human limitation. Ben. He looked up to see Gwen running toward him, her anodite energy flaring around her like a protective aura. Behind her came Kevin, his body partially armored with absorbed metal, and Rook. Proto-Tool at the ready. They stopped several feet away, expressions shifting from relief to shock as they registered his appearance. What happened to you? Kevin blurted out. Ben struggled to focus on his friends, his perception still cycling between microscopic detail and macroscopic overview. I merged with Alien X. Permanently. That's not possible, Gwen whispered, her mana-infused eyes widening as she scanned his transformed state. The energy readings I'm getting from you are off the charts. The dimensional barriers around you are in constant flux, Rook observed, checking readings on his Proto-Tool. Your quantum signature is unlike anything in the Plummer database. Ben tried to stand but stumbled as dizziness overwhelmed him. Hi's body flickered between solid matter and energy, struggling to maintain coherence. We need to get him to Plumber HQ, Gwen said decisively. No, Ben managed, his voice reverberating strangely. Not stable enough. Too dangerous. Then where? Kevin demanded. Before Ben could answer, reality rippled around him. A blinding flash of light momentarily obscured his form, and when it faded, two translucent figures stood beside him. One male, one female, both with the distinctive green features of celestial sapiens, though somehow more human in proportion. Bellicus, the male figure announced, his voice booming despite his insubstantial appearance. Serena, the female counterpart said softly. Gwen instinctively raised mana-charged hands. What's happening? An unexpected development, Serena replied, studying her semi-corporeal form with fascination. The convergence created something unforeseen. We remain connected to the hybrid, Bellicus explained, gesturing toward Ben, but have achieved partial independence. Hybrid, Kevin repeated. Benjamin Tennyson is no longer merely human, Bellicus stated. Nor are we fully celestial sapien. We exist in a state of quantum entanglement, separate yet unified. Ben finally managed to stand, concentrating on stabilizing his fluctuating form. I can still feel them, inside me. But they're also, he gestured at the translucent figures. This is unprecedented, Rook said, cautiously lowering his weapon. According to all known science, such a merger should be impossible. Many impossible things become possible when necessity demands. Came a familiar voice from behind them. They turned to find Professor Paradox standing there, pocket watch in hand, his expression uncharacteristically grave. I've witnessed countless timelines, but this particular development occurred in only one. You knew this would happen? Ben asked. I knew it could happen, Paradox corrected. The probability was infinitesimal, yet here we are. He approached Ben slowly, studying him with scientific curiosity. How do you feel? Like I'm everywhere at once, Ben answered honestly. Like I could reshape mountains with a thought or create stars with a gesture. But I might accidentally erase reality if I sneeze. Paradox nodded solemnly. Your assessment is not far from the truth. You've become something unique in the multiverse. Benjamin, a human consciousness with access to celestial sapien power, without the limitation of requiring consensus. But Bellicus and Serena are still here, Gwen pointed out, gesturing toward the translucent figures. They are aspects of Ben now, Paradox explained. Externalized fragments of his expanded consciousness. They influence but no longer control. A distant explosion drew their attention skyward. A plume of smoke rose from downtown Bellwood, accompanied by screams and the distinctive sound of energy weapons. The Incursine advance scouts, Rook identified, checking his communicator. They're taking advantage of the chaos to launch an invasion. Perfect timing, Kevin muttered sarcastically. Ben stepped forward, his body momentarily shifting to resemble Alien X. More closely before settling back into its hybrid state. I'll handle this. Ben, wait, Gwen called. You don't know how to control your new powers yet. She is correct, Serena's externalized form agreed. Celestial sapien abilities require centuries to master fully. We don't have centuries, Ben replied. People are dying right now. He concentrated, attempting to teleport to the battle site as he'd seen Alien X do before. Instead of the instant translocation he expected, green energy enveloped him like a cocoon, slowly lifting him into the air. This might take some practice, he admitted. Focus on the destination, Bellicus instructed, not as a location, but as a concept. Ben closed his eyes, envisioning the downtown square not as coordinates but as an idea, the heart of Bellwood, the center of conflict. The place where he was needed most. The energy surrounding him pulsed once, and suddenly he was there, hovering above a scene of chaos. 5 Incursine warriors had cornered a group of civilians against the wall of the city museum. Their leader, a battle-scarred soldier with lieutenant markings, aimed a disintegrator cannon at the terrified humans. In the name of Emperor Milius, surrender! The lieutenant's threat died in his throat as he noticed Ben floating above them, cosmic energy radiating from his transformed body. I think you should leave, Ben suggested, his voice carrying an undercurrent of power that made the air vibrate. The Incursines exchanged nervous glances. What are you supposed to be? The lieutenant demanded, adjusting his weapon to target Ben instead. I'm not entirely sure yet, Ben answered truthfully. But I know what I'm not. I'm not someone who lets invaders threaten my home. The lieutenant fired his disintegrator cannon. The deadly beam streaked toward Ben, who made no move to dodge. Instead, he raised a hand almost lazily, and the energy simply stopped. The beam hung suspended in midair, its molecular streak rupture visible to Ben's enhanced perception. With a slight gesture, he transformed the destructive energy into a shower of harmless light particles that rained down over the square. Last chance, Ben offered. Leave peacefully. The Incursines responded by opening fire with all their weapons simultaneously. Ben sighed and extended both hands. Time slowed to a crawl around him as his consciousness expanded to track each individual energy blast. Rather than stopping them, this time he created small spatial distortions that redirected each beam back toward the weapon that fired it. The Incu-Arshan weapons disintegrated in their hands, leaving the soldiers unharmed but disarmed. Impossible, the lieutenant gasped. No species possesses such technology. It's not technology, Ben explained, descending slowly until his feet touched the ground. It's just me. The lieutenant drew a concealed blade and charged with desperate bravery. Ben felt time slowing naturally around him, giving him ample opportunity to consider his response. He could simply teleport the attacker away, or create an energy barrier, or transmute the blade to harmless material. Instead, he chose the most human option. As the lieutenant reached him, Ben sidestepped with practiced efficiency, used the attacker's momentum against him, and executed a perfect throw that sent the Incursine tumbling across the pavement. The other soldiers broke and ran. Their lieutenant scrambled to his feet, backing away from Ben with newfound fear in his eyes. Tell Emperor Milius that Earth is protected, Ben said. Always has been, always will be. The lieutenant turned and fled, following his soldiers toward their hidden ship. Ben watched them go, feeling strangely detached from the victory. The small-scale ICT seemed almost trivial compared to the cosmic awareness now occupying portions of his mind. He turned to the civilians, who stared at him with a mixture of awe and uncertainty. Is everyone all right? You're Ben 10, aren't you? A young woman asked hesitantly. But different. I am, he confirmed. Just had an upgrade. A familiar voice called out behind him. A rather significant upgrade, I'd say. Ben turned to find Azimuth standing atop a fallen piece of debris, his small galvan form dwarfed by the destruction around him. Despite his size, the inventor's presence commanded attention. His eyes sharp with intelligence and concern. Azimuth, Ben acknowledged, kneeling to bring himself closer to eye level with the galvan. I didn't expect you. When the Omnitrix signals a critical evolutionary event, I tend to take notice, Azimuth replied dryly. Particularly when said event involves a permanent merger with a celestial sapien. You know about that already. The Omnitrix is my greatest creation. Ben Tennyson. Did you think I wouldn't monitor its most dangerous function? Azimuth's expression softened slightly. Though I never anticipated you would actually attempt such a convergence. I didn't have a choice, Ben said. The Chronosapien wave would have. I am aware of what was at stake, Azimuth interrupted. That doesn't change the fact that you've done something irrevocable. Something that may have consequences beyond your comprehension. Before Ben could respond, Gwen, Kevin, and Rook arrived, accompanied by the translucent forms of Bellicus and Serena. Paradox appeared a moment later, stepping out of a swirling temporal portal. Fascinating, Azimuth observed, studying the externalized celestial sapien aspects. A partition of consciousness manifesting as semi-independent entities. Quote, we didn't choose this form, Bellicus stated. But we find it illuminating, Serena added, reaching out to touch a flowering plant growing from a crack in the pavement. Her translucent fingers passed through it initially, but after a moment of concentration, she managed to make contact, causing the plant to bloom more fully. Your control is improving, Paradox noted. As is Ben's, Azimuth observed. That was quite a display of precision with the Incursines. I barely did anything, Ben admitted. I just thought about what I wanted to happen, and it happened. That's what makes this so dangerous, Azimuth warned. Celestial sapien power responds to thought and intent. Without the restraint of requiring consensus between aspects, there's nothing preventing you from reshaping reality on a whim. Except me, Ben countered. I'm still me, Azimuth. I still know right from wrong. For now, the Galvan replied quietly. But power changes people, Ben. Absolute power changes them absolutely. An uncomfortable silence fell over the group. In the distance, sirens wailed as emergency services responded to the aftermath of both the Chronosepian wave and the Incursine attack. Gwen finally broke the silence. What happens now? Now, Paradox said, checking his pocket watch, we deal with the aftereffects of the wave. Despite Ben's intervention, temporal fissures have appeared throughout the region. Reality needs mending. I can help with that, Ben offered, raising a hand glowing with cosmic energy. No, Azimuth and Paradox exclaimed simultaneously. Temporal manipulation requires extraordinary precision, Paradox explained more calmly. Until you fully understand your abilities, attempting such repairs could cause more harm than good. The professor is correct, Azimuth agreed. You need training, Ben. And observation. You make it sound like I'm dangerous, Ben said, a note of hurt in his voice. You are dangerous, Bellicus stated bluntly. You possess power that could unmake galaxies. Or heal them, Serena countered softly. Both perspectives are valid, Rook interjected diplomatically. Which is why proper training is essential. Ben looked down at his hands, watching as they fluctuated between human flesh and cosmic energy. So what do we do? I can't exactly go back to normal life like this. First, we need to stabilize your form, Azimuth said. The convergence is incomplete, causing the fluctuations you're experiencing. And how do we do that? Kevin asked. I may have something that can help, a new voice called out. They turned to see a young woman approaching confidently through the rubble. Her olive complexion contrasted with stark white laboratory attire, and her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail. She carried an advanced scanner of obvious alien design. Elena. Ben recognized her immediately despite the years since they'd last met. Elena Validus. Elena nodded, a slight smile crossing her lips. Hello, Ben. Looks like you've gotten yourself into another impossible situation. You could say that, he agreed. But what are you doing here? They've been working with the plumbers, scientific division, she explained, activating her scanner and directing it toward Ben. Specializing in nanite technology and its applications for containing exotic energy. Elena has become one of Earth's foremost experts on defensive technology, Rook added. Particularly against high-level threats. And you don't get much higher level than this, Elena commented. Studying her scanner's readings with professional interest. Fascinating. The energy signature is unlike anything I've encountered. Can your technology help stabilize him? Gwen asked, a hint of protectiveness in her voice. Possibly, Elena replied, meeting Gwen's gaze directly. I've developed containment fields that might help regulate the energy fluctuations until he learns better control. Ben felt a strange sensation as Elena's scanner passed over him, almost like recognition on a subatomic level. The nanites, he realized aloud. They're responding to my energy. Elena nodded, looking impressed. You can sense that. Yes, my nanites have evolved significantly since our last encounter. They're partially organic now, capable of adapting to new energy patterns. CH makes them uniquely suited to interface with your transformed state, Azimuth concluded, stroking his chin thoughtfully. Ingenious. I'll need to make adjustments to the programming, Elena said, still scanning Ben from different angles. But I believe I can create a stabilization field that will help you maintain a consistent form. Thank you, Ben said sincerely. It's good to see you again, Elena. Something flickered in her eyes, perhaps surprise at his gratitude, or something more complex, before she nodded professionally. Let's get you to my lab. The sooner we start, the better. Wait, Paradox interjected. Before we proceed further, there's something you should all understand. He turned to face Ben directly. What has happened today was not merely a response to an immediate threat. It is the beginning of something far greater. What do you mean? Ben asked. The multiverse exists in a state of delicate balance, Paradox explained. Certain beings, celestial sap, ions among them, serve as linchpins for that balance. By becoming what you now are, you've created a new variable in the cosmic equation. Is that bad? Kevin asked bluntly. It is, unprecedented, Paradox replied carefully. And it has been noticed. As if in response to his words, the sky above them darkened suddenly. Not with clouds or smoke, but with something more fundamental, as though reality itself was being compressed. A perfect circle of absolute darkness appeared directly overhead, expanding until it was nearly 100 feet in diameter. "What is that?" Gwen asked, Mana N. Urgi instinctively gathering around her hands. "The Celestial Council," Serena whispered, her translucent form trembling. "They have sensed the convergence," Bellicus added, his usual belligerence tempered by what appeared to be genuine concern. From the dark portal descended a being similar to Alien X in appearance, but larger and more intricately detailed, with celestial patterns shifting across its ebony surface. Unlike the relatively humanoid proportions of Ben's transformation, this entity seemed only vaguely anchored to three-dimensional space, its form shifting constantly as though conforming to reality was an afterthought rather than a requirement. "Sentinel," Azimuth identified the being with uncharacteristic awe in his voice. "One of the Celestial Council's enforcers." The entity spoke, its voice bypassing conventional sound to resonate directly in the minds of all present. "Benjamin Kirby Tennyson, you have violated the natural order." Ben stepped forward, positioning himself between the cosmic entity and his friends. "I did what was necessary to save my world. Necessity is subjective, consequence is absolute." The being's form contracted slightly, focusing more intently on Ben. "Your transformation represents an unauthorized evolution." "Unauthorized," Ben repeated, indignation rising within him. "I didn't realize I needed permission to save my planet." "Ben," Azimuth cautioned quietly, "this is not an adversary you can defeat with either power or words." "Correct, Galvan." Sentinel's attention shifted briefly to Azimuth before returning to Ben. "The Council does not seek conflict. It seeks equilibrium." "Then we want the same thing," Ben said, his voice steadying as he drew on both Bellicus's confidence and Serena's diplomacy. "I only want to protect Earth and help maintain balance in the universe." The cosmic entity hovered silently for a moment, as if considering his words. Then, in a movement too quick to follow, it extended a limb directly into Ben's chest. There was no physical impact, but Ben gasped as he felt the being's consciousness interfacing directly with his own, scanning his thoughts, memories, and intentions with cold precision. "Interesting," Sentinel finally declared, withdrawing. "Your mind remains predominantly human despite the convergence." "This was unexpected." "Is that good or bad?" Kevin muttered. "The Council will deliberate." The entity began ascending back toward the portal. "You will be monitored, Benjamin Tennyson. Should your power threaten cosmic balance, intervention will be necessary." "What kind of intervention?" Gwen called out. Sentinel paused. "Final." With that ominous declaration, the entity vanished into the dark portal, which collapsed in on itself and disappeared, leaving the sky clear once more. "Well," Paradox remarked into the tense silence that followed. "That went better than expected." "Better," Elena echoed incredulously. "It just threatened to destroy Ben if he steps out of line." "The Celestial Council rarely gives warnings," Azimuth explained. "The fact that they chose observation over immediate action suggests they see potential value in Ben's transformation." "Or they're just curious to see what happens," Kevin suggested. "Perhaps both," Paradox conceded. "In any case, we now have time, though how much remains uncertain." Ben sat heavily on a piece of broken concrete, his form fluctuating more noticeably as the stress of the encounter affected his control. "So I'm basically on cosmic probation." "An apt description," Serena's externalized form agreed, moving to stand beside him. Though translucent, her presence provided a strange comfort. "But you are not alone in this journey." "Indeed not," Paradox confirmed. "Which brings us back to immediate concern of stabilizing your form." Elena approached, scanner still in hand. "My lab is equipped with the necessary technology. We should go immediately." "I will accompany you," Azimuth stated. "My expertise may prove useful in adapting your nanite technology to Ben's unique energy signature." As they prepared to depart, Rook received an alert on his proto-tool. "Magister Tennyson is requesting a status report. He's coordinating recovery efforts at Plumber HQ. Tell my grandpa I'm okay," Ben said. "Or, as okay as I can be, given the circumstances. And tell him we'll bring Ben to HQ once his condition is stabilized," Gwen added. Rook nodded and moved away to make the call. Kevin followed, offering assistance with the technical aspects of the communication. Left momentarily alone with Gwen, Ben asked quietly, "Am I doing the right thing, Gwen? Keeping these powers?" Gwen considered the question seriously, her Anodite heritage allowing her to perceive dimensions of Ben's transformation that others couldn't. "I don't think it's a matter of right or wrong anymore, Ben. The convergence is done. Now it's about what you choose to do with what you've become." "That's what I'm afraid of," Ben admitted. "What if Azimuth is right? What if this power changes me into something I don't recognize? Then we'll be here to remind you who you are," Gwen promised, placing a hand on his fluctuating shoulder. Despite the cosmic energy crackling beneath her fingers, she maintained the contact, a physical anchor to his humanity. "As will I," Serena added softly, her translucent form emanating gentle light. "And I will ensure you don't become weak," Bellicus declared, his aspect hovering imposingly nearby. Ben managed a small smile. "Great. A cosmic angel and devil on my shoulders. We are neither angelic nor demonic," Bellicus corrected. "Merely aspects of your expanded consciousness." "It was a joke, Bellicus," Ben sighed. "Humor. Another human trait we will need to integrate," the aspect noted seriously. Before Ben could respond, Elena returned with Azimuth perched on her shoulder, an unlikely partnership already forming between the human nanite expert and the Galvan genius. "We're ready to proceed to my laboratory," Elena announced. "I've calculated the optimal frequency for a preliminary stabilization field. And I have made several suggestions for improving its efficiency," Azimuth added. "Which I've already implemented," Elena responded with a hint of pride. Ben stood, his form wavering like heat distortion as he gathered his concentration. "Let's go, then. The sooner we get this under control, the sooner I can figure out what I'm supposed to do with all this." He gestured vaguely at himself and the cosmos simultaneously, a move meant that inadvertently caused several nearby atoms to briefly rearrange themselves into more aesthetically pleasing configurations. "Careful," Azimuth cautioned. "Even your smallest gestures carry power now." Ben nodded, folding his arms tightly against his chest. "Right. No casual gesticulating." "Got it." As they prepared to depart, Paradox stepped forward one last time. "I must attend to the temporal fissures. But we will meet again soon, Ben. Remember, with your new existence comes new perspective. Embrace that perspective, but don't lose sight of the human heart at your core. It is your greatest strength." With those parting words, the time traveler vanished in a flash of blue light. Ben looked around at his assembled friends, Gwen with her protective concern, Kevin with his gruff loyalty, Rook with his steadfast dependability, Elena with her brilliant determination, Azimuth with his critical wisdom, and the externalized aspects of Bellicus and Serena representing the cosmic powers now integrated into his being. For the first time since the convergence, he felt a genuine sense of hope. Whatever he had become, whatever challenges lay ahead, he would not face them alone. "Let's go," he said simply. As they moved through the ruined streets of Bellwood, Ben couldn't help noticing how differently he perceived the world now. Colors had depths he'd never imagined, sounds carried information beyond mere acoustic properties, and time itself seemed to flow in multiple directions simultaneously. Most striking of all was his awareness of connections, invisible threads linking all things across distances both infinitesimal and immense. "It's beautiful," he murmured, mostly to himself. Serena's translucent form glided beside him. "Yes," she agreed, her voice carrying a depth of understanding that transcended words. "That is what I wished to show you all those times you transformed. The universe is far more magnificent than any being can comprehend alone. Yet power does not equate to wisdom." Bellicus rumbled from his other side. "Remember that, Benjamin Tennyson." Ben nodded, accepting both perspectives as parts of his new reality. As they walked through a world forever changed by the events of this day, he silently made a promise to himself. Whatever he had become, whatever power now flowed through him, he would remain true to the core principles that had guided him from the beginning. Hero, protector, human, even if the last one now came with an asterisk. Chapter 1 End Chapter 2, Ripples. Elena Validus's laboratory occupied the renovated top floor of what had once been Bellwood's premier research hospital. Now it served as a plumber-adjacent facility specializing in advanced xenotechnology adaptation. The main lab featured curved walls of transparent aluminum with panoramic views of the city skyline, currently marred by plumes of smoke rising from damaged districts. Inside, Ben sat perfectly still within a spherical chamber of pulsing blue light. Nanite-infused energy fields crisscrossed the space in geometric patterns, responding dynamically to the fluctuations in his transformed body. He'd been there for 6 hours. Quantum C. Coherence stabilizing at 62%, Elena announced, studying holographic readouts projected above her workstation. Her fingers danced across virtual controls with practiced precision, each adjustment triggering corresponding shifts in the containment field. That's an 8% improvement since we started. Azimuth, perched on a hovering platform beside her, frowned at the data. The progress is insufficient. At this rate, complete stabilization would require approximately 73 hours. Which we don't have, Gwen added from her position near the chamber. She hadn't left since they'd arrived. Her anodite-enhanced senses providing additional insights into Ben's condition. His energy signature keeps slipping. Like it's trying to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Because it is, Azimuth confirmed. Celestial Sapien consciousness naturally spans multiple planes of existence. Benjamin's human neurology was never designed to process such awareness. Inside the chamber, Ben opened his eyes. The irises flickered between their natural green and bottomless cosmic black. I can hear you guys, you know. How do you feel? Elena asked, stepping closer to the containment field. Like I'm being pulled in 1,000 directions at once, Ben answered. His voice carried an unsettling harmonic quality, as though multiple voices spoke in perfect unison. But it's getting better. I can almost hold myself together now. Near the observation window, the translucent forms of Bellicus and Serena hovered in silent communion. Unlike Ben's fluctuating state, they had achieved a more stable manifestation, though they remained partially transparent and occasionally phased through solid matter when their concentration lapsed. The externalized aspects appear more coherent than Ben himself. Rook observed, scanning them with his proto-tool. Fascinating. Not fascinating. Concerning, Kevin corrected, arms crossed as he leaned against a console. They're drawing stability from him. Serena turned toward them, her luminous features showing something close to offense. We are not parasitic entities, Kevin Levin. We are aspects of Ben's expanded consciousness. Yet we exist independently, Bellicus added, his tone contemplative rather than combative for once. A paradox worthy of consideration. Ben's grandfather, Max Tennyson, entered the laboratory with the measured stride of someone accustomed to crisis management. His plumber uniform showed signs of recent battle, and exhaustion lined his face, yet his eyes remained sharp and alert. Status report, he requested. His gaze immediately finding Ben within the containment field. Progressing, but slowly, Elena answered. The nanite stabilization matrix is adapting to his energy signature. But the integration is complex. Max nodded, his expression revealing little of the concern he surely felt. The Incarsine advance forces have withdrawn from Earth orbit, but our intelligence suggests they're simply regrouping. Not retreating. They saw what Ben did to their scouts, Kevin remarked. Can't blame them for rethinking their invasion plans. Don't be so certain, Max cautioned. Emperor Milius might view Ben's transformation as a reason to accelerate their timetable, not abandon it. He approached the containment field, studying his grandson with experienced eyes. How are you holding up, Ben? Ben attempted a reassuring smile, though the effect was somewhat undermined by a momentary fluctuation that caused his teeth to briefly appear as miniature galaxies. I've been better, Grandpa. But I've definitely been worse. The plumbers are coordinating with global governments to manage public response to the Chronosapien incident, Max informed them. So far, we've maintained information control. But rumors are spreading. What kind of rumors? Gwen asked. That Ben 10 has either ascended to godhood or become a threat to planetary security, Max answered frankly. Neither narrative serves our interests. Ben winced. Great. So I'm either the second coming or public enemy number one. We need to demonstrate that you remain Earth's protector, Max said. Once you're stabilized. Of course. Elena's monitoring equipment suddenly emitted a series of urgent alerts. The nanite field surrounding Ben pulsed erratically as his form became increasingly transparent. What's happening? Max demanded. Energy cascade. Elena responded tersely, fingers flying across her controls. His quantum state is destabilizing again. Inside the chamber, Ben grimaced as pain lanced through him. He could feel his consciousness expanding outward against his will, perception spiraling beyond the laboratory, beyond Bellwood, beyond Earth itself. Stars wheeled in his vision. Galaxies blossomed and died, and the fabric of reality stretched thin around him. Ben, Gwen called out, her voice seeming to come from an impossible distance. Focus on my voice. Find your center. With tremendous effort, Ben pulled his awareness back, concentrating on the immediate physical space around him. The nanite field responded, contracting to provide additional structure to his fluctuating form. That's it, Elena encouraged, adjusting the field parameters to match his renewed focus. The nanites are adapting to your energy pattern. Work with them, not against them. I'm trying. Ben managed through gritted teeth. The pain subsided gradually as his form solidified once more. Azimuth studied the data with growing concern. These fluctuations are increasing in both frequency and intensity. The convergence remains fundamentally unstable. There must be something more we can do, Gwen insisted. Perhaps there is, came a new voice from the laboratory entrance. They turned to see Professor Paradox standing there, and beside him was a woman none of them had expected, Kai Green, dressed in practical field gear with xenoarchaeological equipment slung across her shoulder. Her black hair was tied back in an intricate braid, and her expression was one of professional curiosity rather than the surprise that might be expected upon seeing a transformed Ben. Kai. Ben's voice carried genuine surprise, momentarily overriding the harmonic resonance that had characterized it since his transformation. Hello, Ben, she replied with remarkable composure. Her eyes studied his transformed state with analytical interest rather than alarm. When Paradox told me what happened, I had to see for myself. Ms. Green has been conducting research that may prove relevant to your current predicament, Paradox explained. You've been researching celestial sapiens? Azimuth asked, skepticism evident in his tone. Not specifically, Kai answered, approaching the containment field with confident steps. My work focuses on cross-dimensional entities and how ancient civilizations interpreted their manifestations. She unslung her pack, removing a cylindrical device of obvious alien design. This scanner was calibrated to detect residual energy signatures from such manifestations. Elena eyed the device with professional interest. Galvan design, but with Nalgian modifications. Kai nodded, impressed by Elena's recognition. Exactly. It can map quantum fluctuations across 11 dimensions simultaneously. May I? Elena extended her hand toward the device. After a moment's hesitation, Kai handed it over. Elena examined it briefly before connecting it to her own equipment. New data streams immediately appeared on her displays. This is remarkable, Elena murmured. Studying the readings, it's detecting harmonic patterns in Ben's energy signature that my equipment couldn't perceive. Inside the chamber, Ben watched this exchange with mixed emotions. Seeing Kai again after so much time was disorienting enough. Seeing her interact so professionally with Elena while he sat helpless in a containment field added layers of complexity he wasn't prepared to process. How did you know to bring this? Max asked Kai, his tone suggesting he was evaluating potential security concerns. I didn't, Kai answered. I was in the Himalayan mountains documenting interdimensional residue from an ancient manifestation site when Professor Paradox found me. She glanced at the time traveler. He suggested my equipment might help, but didn't explain exactly how. Time constraints, Paradox offered with an apologetic shrug. The temporal ripples from Ben's transformation are propagating throughout the timeline. Certain interested parties are already taking notice. The Celestial Council isn't the only group monitoring this situation, Max concluded, his expression grim. Precisely, Paradox confirmed, which is why stabilizing Ben's condition quickly has become even more urgent. Elena and Azimuth had already integrated Kai's scanner into the monitoring system. New insights appeared in the holographic displays, revealing previously invisible patterns in Ben's quantum structure. There, Elena pointed to a recurring wave pattern. That's our problem. The human and celestial sapien aspects are oscillating at discordant frequencies. Like two radio stations broadcasting on nearly identical channels, Kai suggested, studying the display. They're causing interference patterns. A simplistic but essentially accurate analogy, Azimuth conceded. The question is how to synchronize these frequencies without compromising either component. Inside the containment field, Ben cleared his throat. Guys, maybe ask the radio stations themselves. Their attention returned to him, expressions ranging from surprise to embarrassment at having discussed him as a problem to be solved rather than a person in the room. Sorry, Ben, Elena said. What are you experiencing right now? Ben considered the question carefully. It's like, I'm trying to exist in two places at once. Part of me is here, with you all, thin king and feeling like Ben Tennyson always has. But another part is, everywhere. I can sense cosmic events happening light years away. I can perceive the quantum foam bubbling at the foundation of reality. He paused, struggling to articulate concepts that human language wasn't designed to express. And the two perspectives keep sliding against each other, never quite aligning. That aligns with our readings, Kai noted, studying both Ben and the data with equal intensity. The human consciousness is trying to maintain temporal linearity while the celestial sapien aspect naturally exists ACR. All points in spacetime simultaneously. Correct, Serena's externalized form confirmed, drifting closer to the containment field. Celestial sapiens perceive all moments as eternally present. Which is why we require consensus to act, Bellicus added. Without such restraint, reality would be constantly rewritten according to momentary impulses. A thoughtful expression crossed Elena's face. What if the solution isn't forcing synchronization, but facilitating communication between the aspects? Explain, Azimuth prompted. We've been treating this like a purely physical problem, trying to stabilize Ben's quantum state through external means, Elena elaborated. But what if the instability stems from the psychological disconnect between his human consciousness and celestial sapien awareness? So instead of a technological solution, Gwen began. We need a psychic one, Kai finished, their thoughts aligning despite their different backgrounds. Max turned to his granddaughter. Gwen, your anodite abilities include psychic connection. Could you establish a bridge between Ben's conflicting aspects? Gwen considered this carefully. Maybe, but it would be dangerous. His energy levels are off the charts, and the dimensional components are beyond my experience. Perhaps a combined approach, Rook suggested. Using Ms. Validus's nanite technology to create a stable framework within which Gwendolyn could establish a psychic connection. That might actually work, Elena acknowledged, already mentally calculating the necessary adjustments to her system. I'll add a dimensional anchor component using techniques I've documented from ancient sites, Kai offered, pulling additional equipment from her pack. Some civilizations developed methods for stabilizing bridges between dimensional planes. Quote, while they discussed the technical details, Ben watched with a strange sense of detachment. Part of him was deeply touched by their efforts to help him, while another part observed the proceedings with cosmic indifference, perceiving their actions as infinitesimally small ripples in the vast ocean of existence. Ben, Serena's gentle voice drew his attention. Her translucent form hovered near the edge of the containment field. You must decide which aspect of yourself to emphasize. What do you mean? He asked. The instability exists because you are trying to be both fully human and fully celestial sapien simultaneously, she explained. Such perfect duality is impossible. One aspect must take precedence while the other is integrated harmoniously. Bellicus approached from the other side. She speaks truth. You must choose your dominant nature. The laboratory fell silent as everyone turned to listen to this exchange. The implications were immediately apparent, and profound. You're saying I have to choose between being human or being whatever Alien X is? Ben asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Not exactly, Serena clarified. Both aspects will remain, but one must form the foundation of your identity, with the other integrated as a component rather than an equal partner. And if I choose to remain primarily human? Ben asked. Then your cosmic awareness will be tempered, filtered through human perception, Serena answered. You would retain tremendous power, but experience existence primarily through the lens of human consciousness. And if I choose the celestial sapien aspect as primary? Ben continued, already suspecting the answer. You would perceive reality as we do, Bellicus stated. All of time ND space would be eternally present to your awareness. Your human memories and values would remain, but increasingly distant, like childhood recollections. A heavy silence fell over the laboratory. The true nature of Ben's situation became clear. This wasn't simply a matter of controlling new powers, it was a fundamental choice about his very nature and future existence. How long do I have to decide? Ben finally asked. The instability is increasing exponentially, Azimuth answered frankly. Without a decision, complete quantum collapse will occur within approximately 12 hours. Meaning what, exactly? Kevin demanded. Azimuth's expression was grave, meaning Benjamin would cease to exist in any coherent form. His consciousness would disperse across the multiverse. That's not an option, Max stated firmly. We'll find another solution. There may not be one, Paradox said gently. Some choices cannot be circumvented, even by time travelers. Ben closed his eyes, feeling the conflicting aspects of his being pulling him in opposite directions. The human side feared losing his connections, his identity, everything that made him Ben Tennyson. The cosmic side perceived those same connections as beautiful but transient patterns in the infinite tapestry of existence, meaningful, but ultimately just one set of possibilities among endless others. I need time to think, he said finally. Time is precisely what we lack, Azimuth reminded him. Then give me what you can, Ben replied, opening his eyes to reveal them glowing with determination. In the meantime, try Elena's approach. Maybe stabilizing me temporarily will buy us more time for a permanent solution. The team returned to work with renewed urgency. Elena and Azimuth reconfigured the nanite field W. while Kai integrated her dimensional anchoring technology into the system. Gwen prepared herself mentally for the psychic connection, drawing on her anodite heritage to expand her consciousness beyond normal human limitations. The modifications are complete, Elena announced after nearly an hour of intensive work. The nanite field should now function as a stable matrix through which Gwen can establish a psychic connection. And my anchors will help prevent dimensional slippage during the process, Kai added, activating a series of small devices placed strategically around the containment field. They hummed with soft energy, creating visible distortions in the air where dimensional boundaries were reinforced. Gwen stepped forward, her eyes glowing with magenta energy as she prepared herself. I'm ready. Be careful, Gwendolyn, Rook urged, genuine concern evident in his usually stoic demeanor. She gave him a reassuring smile before turning her full attention to Ben. Raising her hands, she projected mana energy toward the containment field. The magenta energy interacted with the blue nanite field, creating a purple interface where the two powers met. I'm establishing the connection now, Gwen said, her voice taking on an echoing quality as her consciousness expanded. Ben, open your mind to me. Inside the field, Ben relaxed his mental barriers, allowing Gwen's psychic presence to make contact with his consciousness. The experience was unlike any telepathic connection they had shared before. Instead of the straightforward meeting of minds, Gwen found herself navigating a complex, multidimensional landscape that represented Ben's transformed consciousness. This is incredible, she whispered, her physical body remaining stationary while her mind explored the vastness of Ben's inner reality. I can see both aspects of him, like two massive continents separated by a turbulent sea. Can you build a bridge between them? Elena asked, monitoring the energy flows carefully. I'm trying, Gwen answered, her face contorting with effort. But they're so different in nature. The human aspect exists in linear time, while the celestial sapien component exists across all time simultaneously. Within the shared mindscape, Ben could perceive Gwen's presence as a warm, familiar light navigating the chaos of his divided consciousness. I can see what you're trying to do, Gwen. He communicated directly to her mind. Let me help. Together, they began creating connections between the disparate aspects of his being. Not forcing them into unnatural synchronization, but establishing channels through which they could communicate and coexist. The nanite field responded to these internal changes, adapting to support the new neural pathways being formed. Outside this mental collaboration, the others watched as Ben's physical form gradually stabilized. The wild fluctuations between human and cosmic appearance slowed, settling into a more controlled oscillation. It's working, Elena announced, studying the readings with cautious optimism. Quantum coherence increasing to 78%, 83%. The dimensional anchors are holding, Kai confirmed, making minor adjustments to maintain optimal performance. Boundary integrity at 92% and stable. After several tense minutes, Gwen carefully withdrew from the psychic connection. staggering slightly as she returned fully to her physical body. Kevin moved quickly to support her, concern evident in his usually guarded expression. "I'm okay," she assured him, though her voice carried exhaustion. It worked, at least partially. I helped establish communication channels between the aspects of Ben's consciousness. Inside the containment field, Ben opened his eyes. The fluctuations had diminished significantly, his appearance now settling into a new baseline, mostly human in form, but with subtle cosmic elements integrated harmoniously. His skin maintained its natural tone, but with faint patterns like star fields visible just beneath the surface. His eyes remained green, though flecks of cosmic energy occasionally shimmered within the irises. "How do you feel?" Max asked, stepping closer to the field. "More coherent," Ben answered, his voice still carrying harmonic undertones but less discordantly than before. "The different aspects of my consciousness aren't fighting each other as much. The stabilization is impressive but incomplete," Azimuth noted, studying the readings. "We've extended the timeline, but the fundamental choice remains. How much time have we gained?" Max asked. "Difficult to say precisely," Azimuth replied. "At current degradation rates, perhaps 72 hours before critical instability returns." 3 days, Ben translated. "Better than 12 hours. We should deactivate the containment field," Elena suggested. "See if you can maintain stability independently." After receiving nods of agreement from Azimuth and the others, Elena initiated the shutdown sequence. The nanite field dissipated gradually, its energy being absorbed back into the laboratory's systems rather than released suddenly. Ben remained seated for a moment, concentrating on maintaining the internal balance Gwen had helped him establish. Then, cautiously, he stood. His movements were fluid and natural, though a subtle aura of cosmic energy continued to shimmer around him in response to his emotions. "So far so good," he commented, taking experimental steps outside the containment area. Small objects in the vicinity, pens, data pads, coffee mugs, vibrated slightly as he passed, responding to the cosmic energy he emitted. "Your control has improved significantly," Rook observed. "But not completely," Ben acknowledged, noticing the object's reactions. With conscious effort, he suppressed the energy field further, and the vibrations ceased. "This is going to take some getting used to. Which brings us to our next challenge," Max said. "The public situation." Paradox checked his pocket watch with theatrical precision. "Ah yes. In approximately 16 minutes, global news networks will begin broadcasting footage of your confrontation with the Incursines. The existence of your transformed state will become public knowledge." "How did they get footage?" Kevin asked. "The area was secured afterward. Civilian recordings," Max explained. "Despite our efforts, several witnesses captured images on personal devices before containment protocols were established." "So much for information control," Ben sighed. "This development may actually work in our favor," Rook suggested. "A controlled public appearance could demonstrate that you remain Earth's protector despite your transformation." "Rook's right," Gwen agreed. "People are scared after the Chronosapian wave. They need reassurance that you're still Ben 10, still on their side." Ben nodded slowly, considering the implications. "What did you have in mind?" "Press conference. Talk show appearance. Something more direct," Max proposed. "There's a situation developing in Tokyo, an interdimensional rift, likely a remnant of the wave. Reports indicate creatures are beginning to emerge." "Perfect timing," Kevin remarked dryly. "Indeed," Paradox agreed with a knowing smile. "Almost as if the universe provides opportunities precisely when they're needed. This could demonstrate your continued commitment to protecting Earth while allowing you to test your enhanced abilities in a controlled environment," Max continued. "With appropriate supervision," Azimuth added pointedly. Ben considered the proposal, weighing his uncertain control against the need for public reassurance. "All right," he decided, "but I want a team with me. People who can intervene if my powers become unstable." "I'll go," Gwen immediately volunteered. "Me too," Kevin added. "Someone's gotta be there to pull your cosmic butt out of trouble." "I shall accompany you as well," Rook stated, checking his proto-tool with practiced efficiency. Ben glanced at the others. "Elena, Kai, my place is here," Elena answered. "I need to analyze the data own today's session and work on improvements to the stabilization technology." "I'll come," Kai decided. My dimensional anchors might prove useful if the rift becomes unstable. She patted the equipment still slung across her shoulder. Besides, I've documented similar phenomena before. Very well, Max nodded. Paradox, will you transport them? I'm afraid I must attend to other ripples in the timestream. The professor declined apologetically. Ben's transformation has caused quite the temporal disturbance. However, he turned to Ben with a contemplative expression. Perhaps this is an opportunity for you to explore another aspect of your new abilities. You mean, teleportation? Ben asked uncertainly. Spatial translocation is well within your capabilities now, Serena's externalized form confirmed. Floating closer, I can guide you through the process. Bellicus, who had been uncharacteristically quiet during the technical discussions, finally spoke. The human fears failure. As well he should. Imprecise translocation could scatter his companions across multiple dimensions. Not helping, Bellicus, Ben muttered. Nevertheless, I speak truth, the aspect responded unapologetically. Power without mastery is merely potential for disaster. Then help me master it, Ben challenged, meeting Bellicus's gaze directly. Instead of just pointing out what could go wrong, something like respect flickered across the aspect's severe features. Very well, Benjamin Tennyson. I shall provide instruction alongside Serena. For the next 15 minutes, Ben received crash course training in spatial translocation from both celestial Sapian aspects. Their teaching styles contrasted dramatically, Serena emphasizing intuitive connection to the cosmic forces involved, while Bellicus focused on precise calculation and force of will, yet somehow their approaches complemented each other, giving Ben a more complete understanding than either could have provided alone. Remember, Serena instructed as the team prepared for departure, space and time are constructs of limited perception. In reality, all places exist simultaneously within the cosmic whole. Meaningless metaphysical nonsense, Bellicus countered. Focus on exact coordinates and maintaining quantum coherence during the transition. Both perspectives have value, Ben acknowledged diplomatically. I'll keep them in mind. The team gathered in the center of the laboratory, Ben, Gwen, Kevin, Rook, and Kai, standing close together as Ben prepared to attempt his first conscious teleportation. Be careful, Elena said, genuine concern evident in her voice. I'll continue working on stabilization technology while you're gone. Thank you, Ben replied, meeting her eyes with equal sincerity. For everything. Max stepped forward to place a hand on Ben's shoulder. Remember your training, Ben. And remember who you are, regardless of what powers you now possess. Ben nodded, taking a deep breath as he concentrated on their destination. He envisioned Tokyo in precise detail, coordinates, atmospheric conditions, the specific location of the dimensional rift according to Plummer reports. Simultaneously, he held in mind Serena's perspective, the conceptual essence of their destination, its place in the cosmic tapestry, the fundamental connection between where they stood and where they intended to be. Cosmic energy began swirling around the group, star-flecked darkness enveloping them as reality bent to Ben's will. For a moment, they existed everywhere and nowhere, possibility, collapsing into certainty as Ben's consciousness guided them through the fabric of space-time. Then, with a flash of green-tinged darkness, they materialized in the heart of Tokyo's Shinjuku district. The transition was jarring despite its instantaneous nature. One moment they stood in Elena's sterile laboratory, the next, they were surrounded by the sensory overload of one of Earth's most densely populated urban centers, or rather, what remained of it after the dimensional rift had appeared. A section of the famous Shinjuku crossing had been transformed into a swirling vortex of chaotic energy. Approximately 50 meters in diameter. The normally bustling intersection was eerily abandoned, evacuation protocols having cleared civilians from the immediate area. Japanese Self-Defense Force (CES) maintained a perimeter at a safe distance, their expressions shifting from focused determination to shock as Ben's team materialized without warning. Plummer Authority, Rook announced immediately in flawless Japanese, displaying his badge to the nearest officer. We are here to address the dimensional anomaly. The officer nodded, though his eyes remained fixed on Ben's transformed appearance. Recognition and uncertainty warring in his expression. It worked, Gwen said, sounding impressed as she checked their surroundings. Perfect positioning, Ben. And we're all in one piece, Kevin added, patting himself down theatrically. Always a plus. Ben barely registered their comments, his enhanced perception drawn inexorably to the dimensional rift. To his transformed senses, it appeared far more complex than a simple tear in spacetime. He could perceive multiple realities bleeding into each other, probability waves collapsing in chaotic patterns, and something else, something intelligent guiding the process. This isn't just a random effect of the chronosapian wave, he said, stepping forward to study the phenomenon more closely. Something's manipulating it deliberately. He's right, Kai confirmed, activating her scanning equipment. These energy patterns are too ordered for a natural dimensional rupture. There's an algorithmic quality to the fluctuations. As if responding to their analysis, the rift pulsed with increased intensity. Shadowy forms began emerging from its depths, humanoid figures composed of shifting geometric patterns that seemed to exist in more dimensions than human perception could process. Where they touched the ground, reality distorted, materials transmuting into alien substances with impossible properties. Chronosapiens, Rook identified them. Proto-tool transforming into combat configuration. Or some variant thereof. No, Ben contradicted, his cosmic awareness providing deeper insight. They're native inhabitants of the space between dimensions. The wave damaged the barriers that normally keep their realm separate from ours. One of the entities noticed Ben and paused, its constantly shifting form stabilizing momentarily into a configuration that vaguely resembled a face. It emitted a series of mathematical harmonics that Ben somehow understood as language. Less than CELESTIALSAPIEN greater than, the entity communicated. Less than unexpected. Purpose greater than. The Japanese officers and even Ben's teammates looked confused, having heard nothing but discordant tones. Only Ben, with his transformed consciousness, could interpret the meaning. I'm here to repair the damaged boundary between our realms, he answered, instinctively responding in the same mathematical language. The entity's form rippled with what Ben recognized as surprise. Less than HYBRID entity. Classification unknown. Threat assessment required greater than. Before Ben could respond further, the entity emitted a complex harmonic pulse that rippled outward, passing through physical matter without effect but causing the other interdimensional beings to converge rapidly around their position. Ben, Gwen asked uncertainly, mana energy gathering around her hands. What's happening? They're trying to decide if I'm a threat, Ben explained, maintaining focus on the gathering entities. Stay calm but ready. I'm going to try diplomacy first. And if diplomacy fails? Kevin asked, absorbing the material of a nearby metal barricade into his skin. Then we show them why they shouldn't mess with Earth, Ben answered, cosmic energy shimmering beneath his skin. The lead entity approached Ben directly, its form extending tendrils of mathematical energy that probed at his quantum structure. The sensation was uncomfortable but not painful, like being examined on a fundamental level of existence. Less than anomaly greater than. The entity finally declared. Less than celestial sapine power. Human consciousness. Impossible configuration greater than. Not impossible, Ben corrected. Just unprecedented. Less than purpose greater than. The entity repeated its earlier query. To repair the boundary between our realms, Ben reiterated. Your presence here is destabilizing our reality, and I'm guessing ours is doing the same to yours. The entity pulsed with harmonic patterns that Ben interpreted as consideration. Less than accurate assessment. Boundary degradation bidirectional greater than. Then let me help restore it, Ben offered. Quote, I have the power to repair the damage caused by the chronosapian wave. The entity conferred with its companions in rapid mathematical exchanges that even Ben's enhanced perception struggled to follow completely. Finally, it turned back to him. Less than proposal accepted. Cooperation authorized greater than. Ben nodded and turned to his team. They've agreed to let me try repairing the rift. I need you all to maintain the perimeter and make sure no one interferes. What exactly are you planning to do? Gwen asked, concern evident in her voice. I'm going to use my celestial sapien abilities to rebuild the dimensional boundary, Ben explained. Serena and Bellicus will guide me. The externalized aspects, who had remained silent observers until now, moved to hover on either side of him. The process requires precise manipulation of fundamental forces, Serena advised. Follow the natural patterns of reality rather than imposing your will upon them. But maintain unwavering focus, Bellicus added. Hesitation or distraction could collapse both dimensional planes. No pressure, Kevin muttered. I'll deploy my anchors to stabilize our side of the boundary, Kai offered, already unpacking her equipment. They should help prevent further deterioration while you work. Ben nodded gratefully before turning back to the rift. As he approached it, his perception expanded further, allowing him to see the complex web of quantum filaments that constituted the damaged boundary between dimensions. The interdimensional entities moved aside, creating a path for him to the center of the anomaly. Drawing on both Serena's intuitive approach and Bellicus's precision, Ben began manipulating cosmic energy to repair the damaged dimensional boundary. The process required extraordinary focus. Each quantum thread needed to be reconnected in perfect alignment with the underlying structure of reality. A single error could propagate through the entire framework, potentially causing greater damage than the original rift. As Ben worked, the watching crowds beyond the security perimeter grew larger. News helicopters circled overhead, broadcasting live footage of the transformed hero manipulating visible strands of cosmic energy. Smartphones captured images that would soon spread worldwide. Ben Tennyson, evolved beyond humanity, preserving reality itself. The interdimensional entities contributed to the repair process, using their natural affinity for the spaces between realities to guide Ben's efforts. Together, they reconstructed the quantum framework thread by thread, gradually reducing the size and intensity of the rift. From the perimeter, Gwen monitored Ben's energy signature with her anodite senses. His power output is incredible, she commented to Rook, who stood beside her. But stable, at least for now. The integration of his aspects appears more harmonious during focused application of his abilities, Rook observed. Perhaps purposeful use of his powers promotes internal coherence. Kai, kneeling nearby as she maintained her dimensional anchors, looked up with interest. That makes sense. When both aspects have a common goal, they naturally align rather than conflicting. Near the opposite side of the perimeter, Kevin maintained vigilance against potential threats, though his attention frequently returned to Ben's working form. Never thought I'd see Tennyson literally rewiring reality, he remarked to no one in particular. Kids come a long way from that summer vacation when he found the Omnitrix. After nearly 20 minutes of continuous work, the dimensional rift began to close visibly, its swirling energy condensing toward a central point as the repaired boundary reasserted itself. The interdimensional entities, their purpose accomplished, began retreating back to their native realm through the rapidly shrinking portal. The lead entity paused before departing, turning its mathematical face toward Ben one final time. Less than gratitude. OBSE. RVATION. Hybrid entity possesses unique perspective valuable for dimensional stability greater than. Thanks, Ben responded, the effort of maintaining the repair process evident in his voice. Safe journey home. Less than designation. Home, conceptually limiting but acceptable greater than, the entity replied with what Ben interpreted as amusement. Less than farewell, hybrid entity greater than. With that, the last of the interdimensional beings vanished through the closing rift. Ben completed the final connections in the quantum framework, sealing the boundary with a surge of cosmic energy that momentarily illuminated the entire Shinjuku district with ethereal green light. As the light faded, the rift was gone, reality once more stable and continuous where chaotic energy had roiled just minutes before. The damaged infrastructure remained, but the existential threat had been neutralized. Ben lowered his hands, cosmic energy still shimmering around them as he turned back toward his team. The effort had cost him significantly, his form flickering slightly as he struggled to maintain the stability established in Alina's laboratory. Gwen moved quickly to his side. Are you all right? Just tired, Ben managed, his voice reverberating with harmonic overtones. Didn't realize how much energy that would take. From the crowd beyond the security perimeter, a spontaneous cheer erupted as people recognized what had happened. Smartphones flashed continuously as civilians documented the historic moment. Japanese security forces stood at attention, respect evident in their posture despite the otherworldly nature of the being before them. A Japanese official approached, bowing deeply before addressing Ben. On behalf of the government and people of Japan, we extend our profound gratitude for your intervention. Ben returned the bow, somewhat awkwardly given his fluctuating state. I'm just doing my job, he responded simply. The official smiled. Some things remain constant, even as you change, Ben Tennyson. That simple observation struck Ben profoundly. Perhaps the official was right. Perhaps the core of who he was remained unchanged despite his transformation. The thought provided comfort as he rejoined his team. Well done, Ben. Rook commended him. The dimensional boundary appears completely restored. And you did it without destroying half the city, Kevin added with a smirk. That's progress. The anchors helped stabilize the process, Kai noted, packing away her equipment. But the precision of your work was impressive. There was professional admiration in her voice, but something more personal flickered briefly in her eyes before she looked away. Ben accepted their praise with a tired nod, his focus shifting to the news helicopters still circling overhead. Looks like we've gone public in a big way. It was inevitable, Gwen reminded him. And this was the best possible introduction, showing you using your powers to protect Earth. Speaking of which, Kevin interjected. We should probably head back to Bellwood. Elena might have made progress on the stabilization tech. Right, Ben agreed, gathering his concentration for another teleportation. The effort seemed monumentally greater after the energy expended on repairing the rift. Everyone stay close. His team gathered around him once more, but before Ben could initiate the teleportation, a familiar blue portal opened beside them. Professor Paradox stepped through, his expression unusually troubled. I'm afraid your return must wait, he announced without preamble. There's been a development. What kind of development? Gwen asked, immediately alert. The Celestial Council has called an emergency session regarding Ben's transformation, Paradox explained. Their deliberations have accelerated following your public display of power. Is that bad? Kevin asked. Potentially concerning, Paradox answered carefully. The Council rarely acts quickly in any matter. Their sudden interest suggests significant concern. Or opportunity, Serena's externalized form suggested, hovering closer to Ben. Your successful repair of the dimensional boundary demonstrates the unique value of your hybrid nature. Or the threat it poses, Bellicus countered. Power wielded without the restraint of consensus represents everything the Council fears. Ben considered these perspectives, feeling the weight of cosmic politics being added to his already substantial burdens. Do they want to see me? Not yet, Paradox replied. They are simply deliberating. However, I believe it would be prudent to return to Bellwood immediately. There are other ripples from your transformation that require attention. What kind of ripples? Rook asked. Paradox's expression became even more grave. Quote, the multiverse responds to significant evolutionary events, particularly those involving beings with reality-altering capabilities. Your transformation, Ben, has created quantum echoes that are resonating across parallel timelines. Meaning what, exactly? Ben pressed. Meaning that in certain alternate realities, other versions of you are experiencing changes, Paradox explained. Some are attempting similar convergences. With varying results. Others are being affected by the quantum backlash of your successful merger. And that's bad, Ben concluded from Paradox's tone. In some cases, catastrophically so. The time traveler confirmed. In at least one timeline, an alternate Ben has achieved a similar convergence but with different priorities. The implication hung heavily in the air. An alternate version of Ben with celestial sapient powers and malevolent intentions represented a threat beyond ordinary comprehension. Take us back to Bellwood, Ben decided, his exhaustio momentarily forgotten in the face of this new concern. If Elena's made progress with the stabilization technology, I need it. Sounds like I'm going to need full control of these powers sooner rather than later. Paradox nodded and expanded his temporal portal. This will be faster than your teleportation, particularly in your current energy-depleted state. The team moved toward the portal. Ben paused to look back at the crowded streets of Tokyo one last time. Hundreds of civilians watched him, their expressions ranging from awe to fear to hope. In this moment of public revelation, he had shown them that despite his transformation, his commitment to protecting Earth remained unchanged. Whether that would be enough to ease the inevitable fear his new form would inspire remained to be seen. But it was a start. With that thought, he stepped through the portal, returning to face whatever new challenges awaited in Bellwood. The laboratory had changed dramatically in their absence. Elena had expanded her equipment array considerably, incorporating technology from multiple alien sources to create a more comprehensive monitoring and stabilization system. Azimuth remained, now AC, accompanied by several Galvan assistants who scurried between workstations with characteristic efficiency. Most surprisingly, a new figure stood consulting with Max Tennyson, a slender blonde woman in a white bodysuit that seemed to shift and adapt to her movements with unnatural precision. She turned as the team emerged from Paradox's portal, her bright blue eyes widening with recognition. Eunice. Ben identified her with surprise. "Hello, Ben," she greeted him with a warm smile that didn't quite hide her shock at his transformed appearance. "It's been a while. The Unitrix has evolved considerably since your last encounter," Azimuth explained, approaching the newly returned team. "Her adaptive capabilities have proven invaluable in our research. I prefer, Eunice, to the Unitrix these days," she corrected gently. Moving closer to examine Ben with evident fascination. "Your transformation is remarkable, a true hybridization of consciousness and power." "Thanks, I think," Ben replied, uncertain how to respond to being studied so intently. "What exactly are you doing here?" "Azimuth called me," Eunice explained. "My unique perspective as an artificial life form with Xberry NCE absorbing and processing multiple species DNA gives me insight into integration challenges." She gestured to the expanded laboratory equipment. "I've been helping Elena enhance her stabilization technology." With considerable success, Elena added, joining the conversation. Her expression showed a mixture of professional pride and personal concern as she noted Ben's fluctuating state. "The dimensional repair took a lot out of you." "Yeah," Ben acknowledged, his voice carrying increased harmonic distortion as his exhaustion made control more difficult. "Rebuilding reality is apparently energy-intensive." "Who knew?" "You should enter the enhanced stabilization field immediately," Azimuth instructed, pointing toward an upgraded version of the containment chamber. "Your quantum coherence is degrading rapidly." Ben didn't argue, moving directly to the indicated chamber. As he entered, Elena activated the system, and a more sophisticated version of the nanite field enveloped him. The relief was immediate, like slipping into a perfectly structured framework that supported his fluctuating form. "This is better," he acknowledged, settling into the chamber's central seat. "More refined. Eunice helped me understand how to better interface with your hybrid physiology," Elena explained, monitoring the readings as his form stabilized. Her adaptive systems provided a model for more sophisticated nanite programming. Quote, "And I contributed some conceptual refinements," Eunice added modestly. Gwen approached the containment field, studying Ben with both visual and anodite perception. "You pushed yourself too hard in Tokyo." "I did what needed doing," Ben countered, though without heat. "And it worked. At considerable cost to your stability," Azimuth noted critically. Quote, "The public display may have served immediate political purposes, but it accelerated your energy depletion." Speaking of political purposes, Max interjected, "The Tokyo incident is already worldwide news. United Nations representatives are requesting a formal statement regarding Ben's transformation." "Great," Ben sighed. "What are they saying?" "Opinions are divided," Rook reported, checking a data pad. "Many governments express gratitude for your intervention but concern about your increased power level. Several religious organizations have issued statements ranging from proclamations of apocalypse to declarations of divine ascension." "And ordinary people?" Ben asked. "Social media is exploding," Kai answered, having checked her own device. The hashtags #CosmicBen and #AscendedTennyson are trending globally. Public reaction seems split between those celebrating your evolution and those fearing it. "About what we expected," Max concluded. "For now, the plumbers are issuing standard statements emphasizing your continued role as Earth's protector." Ben nodded, too exhausted to worry about public relations at the moment. Within the stabilization field, his fluctuations dually diminished as the nanite matrix helped his disparate aspects achieve temporary harmony. "So what's this about alternate timeline versions of me causing trouble?" he asked, returning to Paradox's concerning revelation. The time traveler stepped forward, his expression grave. "As I mentioned, your successful convergence has created quantum echoes across parallel realities. In most cases, SA echoes are minor, perhaps unusual dreams or momentary awareness of alternate possibilities among your counterparts. But not in all cases, Ben prompted when Paradox paused. No, Paradox confirmed. In at least one timeline, a version of you has achieved a similar convergence with his alien X form. However, this alternate Ben embraced the celestial sapien aspect as primary rather than main, maintaining his human consciousness as dominant, resulting in Gwen Prest, a being of immense cosmic power with only vestigial human perspective, Paradox answered. He calls himself Nega Ben, and he has begun experimenting with reality in his native timeline. Experimenting how? Kevin demanded. Reshaping it according to his whims, Paradox explained. At first in small ways, then with increasing ambition. His actions have destabilized the quantum barriers between dimensions. Which is why the Tokyo Rift was more severe than it should have been, Kai realized, connecting the dots. It wasn't just damage from our chronosapien wave, it was exacerbated by cross-dimensional instability. Precisely, Paradox confirmed, and similar rifts are appearing worldwide, though none yet as severe as the Tokyo incident. So we have to fix them all? Kevin asked incredulously. That would address symptoms rather than the cause, Azimuth interjected. The source of the instability must be addressed directly. All eyes turned to Ben, who sat motionless within the stabilization field, processing these revelations. The implications were clear, as the successful precedent for this type of convergence. He represented both the problem and potentially the solution. You think I need to confront this alternate version of myself, he stated rather than asked. I believe that may become necessary, Paradox acknowledged. Though not before you've achieved complete stability and mastery of your abilities. Which brings us back to the fundamental choice, Azimuth reminded them. Quote, human consciousness primary with celestial sapien power secondary, or the reverse. The choice should be obvious, Bellicus's externalized form declared. Celestial sapien primacy would grant the POE needed to address this threat directly. At the cost of his human perspective and connections, Serena countered. The very qualities that make Ben uniquely valuable as a protector of Earth. Is there truly no middle path? Eunice asked, approaching the externalized aspects with scientific curiosity. No configuration that allows equal partnership rather than dominance of one aspect over the other. The inherent natures are too fundamentally different, Azimuth answered. Celestial sapiens exist across all points in spacetime simultaneously, perceiving reality in ways incompatible with linear human consciousness. One framework must take precedence. Ben listened to this discussion with growing frustration. Everyone spoke about his choice as though it were primarily a tactical decision on which configuration would be most effective for addressing current threats. But for him, it was existential, a decision about who and what he would be for the remainder of his existence. I need to speak with Grandpa, he finally said, interrupting the ongoing technical debate. Alone, the others fell silent, exchanging glances before respectfully withdrawing to the laboratory's far end, giving Ben and Max privacy despite remaining in the same large space. Even the externalized aspects of Bellicus and Serena drifted away, though they remained visibly connected to Ben by faint tendrils of cosmic energy. Max approached the stabilization field, his weathered face showing the concern he'd been carefully controlling in front of the others. How are you really doing, Ben? Honestly, I'm terrified, Grandpa, Ben admitted, his voice low enough that only Max could hear. Everyone's talking about the tactical advantages of different configurations, but they're really talking about either I should still be me or become something else entirely. Max nodded, understanding immediately. That's why I've been quiet during most of these discussions. This isn't a decision anyone can make for you. And it's not one that should be made based purely on tactical considerations. But the consequences affect everyone, Ben pointed out. If I choose wrong, this Nega Ben could destabilize the multiverse. The Celestial Council could decide I'm a threat and take action. Earth could lose its primary defender at a time when it needs one most. All true, Max acknowledged. But none of hat changes the fact that this is fundamentally a question of identity, not strategy. Ben's form flickered within the stabilization field, his emotional turmoil temporarily disrupting the carefully balanced energies. How do I make this kind of choice, Grandpa? How do I decide whether to remain human with cosmic power, or become cosmic with human memories? Max considered this deeply before responding. When I was younger than you are now, I faced a different kind of choice, whether to remain on Earth and lead a normal human life, or join the plumbers and explore the galaxy. The scales were smaller, but the principle was similar, choosing between the familiar and comfortable versus the vast and unknown. What made you decide? Ben asked. I asked myself one question, Max answered. Not what I should do, or what others expected me to do, but what I wanted to do. What path would allow me to be the person I truly believed I was meant to be? Ben absorbed this advice silently. Stabilization field pulsed in rhythm with his contemplation, cosmic energies shifting in patterns that reflected his internal deliberation. I've always been human, he said finally. Even when transformed into alien forms, my consciousness remained fundamentally human, experiencing reality linearly, forming emotional connections, making decisions based on moral principles rather than cosmic calculations. Max nodded encouragingly, listening without interrupting. But I've also always been someone who adapts and evolves, Ben continued. From the moment I found the Omnitrix, my destiny has been about integration, bringing together different aspects of existence into something greater than the sum of its parts. That's true, Max affirmed. You've never simply used alien forms, you've learned from them, incorporated their perspectives into your understanding of the universe. Ben's expression became more resolute as his thoughts clarified. The celestial sapient consciousness FFERS, a perspective I can't fully comprehend as a human, awareness of all possible timelines, perception beyond dimensional limitations, understanding of cosmic principles beyond human conception. Incredibly valuable perspectives, Max agreed, but at what cost to the person you've always been? That's just it, Ben said, something like epiphany dawning in his expression. Maybe the question isn't about choosing one over the other. Maybe it's about finding a way to be both, primarily human in my approach to relationships and moral decisions, but with access to celestial sapient perspective when dealing with cosmic threats. Is that possible? Max asked cautiously. Azimuth seemed convinced one aspect must dominate. Azimuth thinks in binary terms sometimes, Ben replied with a small smile. But I've spent years transforming into creatures with completely alien perspectives. If anyone can find a way to integrate human and celestial sapient consciousness without losing either, it's me. Max studied his grandson with pride tinged with concern. That sounds like the Ben I know, always looking for a third option when presented with an impossible choice. I'll need help, Ben acknowledged. From Elena and her nanite technology, from Eunice's adaptive systems, from Gwen's psychic bridging, from Kai's dimensional anchors, from everyone. You'll have it, Max assured him. Whatever you decide. Before they could continue, an alarm sounded from the main monitoring system. The scientific team rushed back to their stations as multiple displays flashed with urgent data. What's happening? Ben called out. Dimensional disturbance, Elena reported tersely, fingers flying across her controls. Much larger than Tokyo. Location, Max demanded. That's the problem, Kai answered, studying her own equipment with concern. It's not localized to a single point. It's manifesting simultaneously at multiple sites globally. A holographic display activated in the center of the laboratory, showing a three-dimensional model of Earth with pulsing red indicators marking dimensional disturbances. They appeared on every continent, clustered particularly densely in regions with high population density. This is coordinated, Rook observed. Not random fluctuations. It's him, Paradox confirmed grimly. Nega Ben has begun actively probing this timeline. Why? Kevin asked. What does he want? To study the successful convergence, Bellicus's externalized form suggested. To understand how Ben maintained human primacy despite the cosmic power. Or to eliminate a potential rival. Serena added more ominously. A version of himself that represents an alternative path. Ben's expression hardened as he studied the proliferating dimensional breaches. Whatever his reason, he's putting Earth in danger. I need to address this directly. You are not yet stable enough for interdimensional travel, Azimuth cautioned. Attempting to confront your alternate self in your current condition would likely result in your destruction. Then stabilize me, Ben demanded, cosmic energy flaring around him even within the containment field. Whatever it takes. We don't have time for gradual solutions anymore. Elena and Eunice exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. We might have something, Elena said carefully. A more aggressive AP approach to stabilization that Eunice and I developed as a contingency. It's experimental, Eunice warned. And potentially dangerous. It would use my adaptive matrix programming combined with Elena's nanites to force synchronization between your human and celestial sapien aspects. Force synchronization how, exactly? Gwen asked, suspicion evident in her tone. By creating a third-party intermediary system, Elena explained. The nanites would form a quantum buffer between the competing aspects, translating between them in real time. Like a universal translator for different forms of consciousness, Eunice added. The concept has merit, Asmith acknowledged reluctantly. Though the implementation risks are substantial. What kind of risks? Max asked directly. If the system FAILs while integrated with Ben's consciousness, the feedback could shatter his quantum structure completely, Asmith stated bluntly. His essence would be dispersed beyond recovery. A tense silence followed this revelation. The risks were enormous, but so were the stakes. More red indicators appeared on the global hologram as Nega Ben's probing of their timeline intensified. Do it, Ben decided firmly. Ben, Gwen began, concern evident in her voice. We don't have a choice, Gwen, he interrupted gently. Every moment we wait, more rifts appear. Eventually, one will open in a populated area where we can't respond in time. And people will die. Elena nodded, already beginning preparations. We'll need approximately 20 minutes to configure the system. We may not have 20 minutes, Paradox warned. Checking his pocket watch with unusual urgency. The dimensional disturbances are increasing exponentially. Then we work faster, Eunice stated simply, her hands transforming lightly to interface more efficiently with the laboratory equipment. As the team mobilized with renewed urgency, Ben closed his eyes within the stabilization field. He could sense the dimensional disturbances now, feel them like pin pricks across the skin of reality. Behind each one lurked a presence somehow familiar yet fundamentally alien, a version of himself who had chosen a different path. I can feel him watching, Ben said quietly, testing the boundaries between our realities. Can you communicate with him? Serena asked, her externalized form drifting closer. I'm not sure, Ben admitted, reaching out experimentally with his cosmic awareness. It's like looking at a reflection through frosted glass. I can sense his presence, but not connect directly. Which may be fortunate, Bellicus commented. Direct contact in your unstable state could be catastrophic. The laboratory erupted into controlled chaos as Elena and Eunice led the implementation of their experimental stabilization system. Asmith supervised with critical precision while Kai configured her dimensional anchors to support the process. Gwen prepared to establish another psychic link if needed, with Kevin and Rook standing ready to respond to any unforeseen complications. Max approached Ben once more, his expression grave yet determined. Whatever happens next, I want you to know how proud I am of you, Ben. Not because of the power you've gained, but because of the person you've remained despite it. Ben managed a smile that briefly erased the cosmic aspects of his appearance, revealing the young man beneath the transformation. Thanks, Grandpa. That means more than you know. Ready, Elena announced after 18 intense minutes of preparation. The hybrid nanite system is configured and prepared for implementation. The synchronization protocols are optimized, Eunice added. We've incorporated elements from both celestial sapien and human neurological patterns. Asmith Perfa, RMED a final review of their work before giving a reluctant nod. The design is sound, despite the rushed implementation. Proceed. Elena turned to Ben. This will feel intense. The nanites will establish connections throughout your quantum structure, creating pathways between your human consciousness and celestial sapien power. Like neural bridges, Eunice explained, allowing communication and integration without forced dominance of either aspect. Ben took a deep breath, steeling himself for whatever was to come. Do it. Elena activated the system. The blue energy of the stabilization field shifted, taking on a silvery quality as nanites infused with Eunice's adaptive programming flooded the chamber. They surrounded Ben in a swirling cloud before penetrating his fluctuating form, disappearing beneath the surface as they began establishing their network. The sensation was unlike anything Ben had experienced, not painful exactly, but profoundly disorienting. He could feel he nanites creating connections within his very being, linking aspects of his consciousness that had previously existed in conflict. His perception expanded exponentially before contracting again, CYC. Ling through different states of awareness as the system calibrated itself. Outside the chamber, alarms suddenly blared as sensors detected a massive spike in dimensional energy. The holographic disk, lay of Earth flared with warning indicators as dozens of new rifts appeared simultaneously. He's sensed what we're doing, Paradox realized. Nega Ben is accelerating his incursion. The timing is not coincidental, Rook agreed. He must perceive the stabilization attempt as a threat. Within the chamber, Ben was only vaguely aware of this development, his consciousness stretched between multiple states of being as the nanite network established itself. He could feel the competing aspects of his nature, human and celestial sapien, being drawn into new configurations, neither dominant but both fully present. Then, suddenly, clarity. The swirling nanite cloud dissipated as the particles completed their integration. Ben's form solidified, the wild fluctuations between human and cosmic appearance resolving into a stable synthesis, human in form and feature, but with subtle cosmic elements harmoniously integrated. His skin retained its natural tone but now featured faint, starfield-like patterns that shifted with his emotions. His eyes remained green but contained swirling galaxies when viewed from certain angles. Most importantly, his consciousness had achieved a new equilibrium, human perspective and values providing the foundation, with celestial sapien awareness available but no longer overwhelming his sense of self. The externalized aspects of Bellicus and Serena underwent a similar transformation, becoming more distinctly defined while maintaining their connection to Ben. They were now clearly independent entities, though still fundamentally linked to his consciousness. It worked, Elena breathed, studying the readings with a mixture of relief and scientific satisfaction. Quantum coherence at 96% and holding, Eunice confirmed. Neural integration patterns stable across all measured dimensions. Ben stood within the chamber, looking down at his hands with wonder. For the first time since the convergence, he felt truly whole, neither human nor celestial sapien exclusively, but something genuinely new. How do you feel? Gwen asked, approaching the field cautiously. Like myself, Ben answered simply. But more. Before anyone could respond, the laboratory's emergency systems activated as a massive dimensional disturbance manifested directly above Bellwood. The ceiling displays showed a swirling vortex of dark energy forming in the sky over the city. Orders of magnitude larger than any previous rift. He's making his move, Paradox stated grimly. Nega Ben has located you specifically, Ben, and is attempting direct contact. Ben's newly stabilized form showed no fear as he looked up at the visualization of the dimensional rift. Instead, his expression reflected determination and a calm confidence that came from his newfound integration. Then it's time I introduced myself, he said, stepping forward as the stabilization field deactivated. After all, it's not every day you get to meet yourself. Chapter 2 and Chapter 3, Fractured. The dimensional rift above Bellwood pulsed with malevolent energy, stretching the sky into impossible geometries. Citizens stopped in the streets, necks craned upward at the cosmic aberration that had replaced their familiar blue atmosphere. The vortex expanded with mathematical precision, its spiraling patterns suggesting intelligence rather than chaos, design rather than accident. Ben stepped onto the roof of Elena's laboratory, his newly stabilized form radiating quiet confidence. The nanite network had accomplished more than physical coherence, it had granted him unprecedented clarity. Human intuition and celestial sapien awareness no longer competed for dominance but flowed together in seamless harmony. Are you sure about this? Gwen asked, emerald eyes reflecting the darkening sky as she followed him onto the rooftop. We don't know what he wants. I do, Ben replied, his voice carrying subtle harmonic undertones that emphasized rather than distorted his natural speech patterns. He wants to understand how I've managed what he couldn't, integration without losing my humanity. Behind them came the others, Kevin with his skeptical practicality, Rook with his methodical vigilance. Kai with her dimensional anchors already deployed in a protective perimeter, Elena monitoring nanite readings through specialized lenses, and Eunice whose adaptive form deconfigured itself for optimal energy absorption should the need arise. The dimensional integrity is deteriorating rapidly, Kai reported, studying data streams from her equipment. This isn't like the Tokyo Rift, It's being forced open with deliberate intent. Hostile intent. Max questioned through their communicators from the command center below. Before anyone could respond, the vortex contracted suddenly, its swirling energies condensing toward a central point of absolute darkness. From this singularity emerged a figure that prompted involuntary gasps from everyone present except Ben himself. The being resembled Ben in basic physical structure but existed as a negative image, where Ben's cosmic patterns showed as luminous starfields beneath his skin. This entity's human features were dark interruptions in an otherwise cosmic form. His eyes contained not galaxies but endless void, and reality itself seemed to bend uncomfortably around him. Benjamin Tennyson, the entity spoke, his voice reverberating with discordant harmonics that made nearby windows vibrate sympathetically. The inferior version who clings to humanity despite Ascension's gift. Ben stepped forward, positioning himself between the entity and his friends. And you must be what they're calling Nega Ben. Original name. Names are human constructs, the entity dismissed with a casual gesture that briefly distorted the air around his hand. I have evolved beyond such limitations. Evolved, or lost yourself, Ben countered, crossing his arms casually despite the cosmic tension crackling between them. Nega Ben's expression shifted, something like curiosity briefly interrupting his contemptuous demeanor. Fascinating. Your quantum structure has achieved stability despite prioritizing human consciousness. An outcome my calculations suggested was impossible. Maybe your calculations didn't account for excellent friends, Ben suggested, nodding toward his assembled team without taking his eyes off his counterpart. Ah yes, your attachments. Nega Ben's gaze swept dismissively across the rooftop. Temporary configurations of matter that you imbue with subjective significance. From nearby, Bellicus's externalized aspect snorted derisively. He speaks as though he has achieved enlightenment, when he has merely embraced limitation of a different sort. Serena's luminous form nodded in agreement. Celestial Sapian perspective without human compassion is not evolution but reduction. Nega Ben's attention snapped to the externalized aspects, genuine surprise rippling across his cosmic features. You've achieved aspect externalization while maintaining connection. Impossible. You keep using that word, Kevin muttered. Might want to update your dictionary. Nega Ben ignored the comment, his focus intensifying on Ben. Your configuration represents an anomaly that requires study. I must understand the mechanisms of your integration. Why? Ben asked directly. What do you gain from understanding my configuration? Completion. Nega Ben answered with unexpected candor. I achieved cosmic primacy at the cost of human perspective. The resulting consciousness is insufficient. The admission hung in the air between them, a confession of inadequacy from a being of almost limitless power. For a moment, Ben felt a surprising flicker of sympathy for his alternate self. Then let me help you, he offered, taking another step forward. Not through invasion or confrontation, but collaboration. Nega Ben seemed to consider this briefly before darkness swelled around him like a cosmic bruise. Deception. You fear my power and seek to neutralize me through false fraternity. That's not. Ben began, but Nega Ben cut him off with a gesture that sent reality rippling outward in concentric waves. Enough. If you will not share willingly, I shall extract what I need directly. The dark entity extended his hand, and space between them compressed violently. Ben barely had time to raise a defensive field of his own cosmic energy before Nega Ben's attack struck. Not a physical blow, but something more fundamental. It was an attempt to establish direct quantum entanglement, to force their consciousness into temporary synchronization. Ben resisted, drawing on both his human will and celestial Sapian power to maintain separation. The resulting clash of cosmic energies sent shockwaves across Bellwood, shattering windows and triggering car alarms for miles around. Ben, Gwen called out, mana energy already forming protective shields around the rooftop team. Stay back. Ben warned through gritted teeth, his form flickering as he concentrated on repelling the invasive connection. He's trying to force a consciousness link. The nanite network is destabilizing under the strain. Elena reported urgently, her specialized lenses displaying real-time diagnostics. The attack is targeting your integration points specifically. He knows exactly where to hit, Eunice realized. Her adaptive form already reconfiguring to generate counter frequencies. He's studied your quantum structure. Nega Ben's dark laughter echoed across multiple frequencies simultaneously. Your integration is impressive but fundamentally flawed. It relies on artificial constructs, technological crutches rather than true synthesis. With renewed effort, he intensified his attack. Dark tendrils of cosmic energy probing for weaknesses in Ben's nanite network. Where they made contact, reality itself seemed to fracture, creating miniature rifts that spread like cracks in glass. Ben staggered backward, the strain of maintaining his defenses evident in his expression. The cosmic patterns beneath his skin flared erratically as the nanites struggled to maintain integration against this precisely targeted assault. His strategy is effective, Bellicus acknowledged grudgingly. He attacks the boundaries between aspects rather than the aspects themselves. We must reinforce those boundaries, Serena urged, her externalized form moving closer to Ben despite the danger. Kevin had absorbed the metallic composition of the roof access door, his transformed body gleaming in the unnatural light. Enough analysis. Let's hit back. He lunged forward, only to be restrained by Rook's firm grip. Direct physical confrontation would be ineffective against a being of his nature, Rook cautioned. We require a strategic approach. Kai, deploy your anchors at maximum amplitude, Gwen directed, her anodite heritage allowing her to perceive the dimensional damage spreading from the confrontation. Elena, can you reinforce the nanite network remotely? I'm trying, Elena responded, fingers dancing across holographic controls projected from her wrist device. But his attack pattern keeps shifting, he's learning from each attempt. The sky above them darkened further as Nega Ben's power expanded. Ben maintained his resistance, but fracture lines began airing in the air around him, tiny rifts in reality leaking energy from adjacent dimensions. You cannot resist indefinitely, Nega Ben stated, his voice disturbingly calm despite the cosmic violence he was unleashing. Your determination is admirable but futile. Maybe, Ben acknowledged, sweat beading on his forehead as he fought to maintain cohesion. But I've got something you don't. And what might that be? Nega Ben asked condescendingly. People worth fighting for, Ben answered simply. In that moment of clarity, Ben stopped trying to match Nega Ben's raw power directly. Instead, he drew on something his alternate self had abandoned, his human capacity for connection. He reached out mentally to his externalized aspects, to the nanite network Elena had created, to Gwen's mana field, to Kai's dimensional anchors. To Eunice's adaptive resonance, to Kevin's unyielding loyalty, to Rook's methodical support. The resulting surge of power was not merely additive but exponential. Ben's form stabilized, the cosmic patterns beneath his skin synchronizing into complex geometric configurations as he integrated not just his own aspects but the supportive energies of his friends. Nega Ben's attack faltered momentarily, confusion replacing confidence in his void-like eyes. What is this? Your power should not be increasing under pressure. You've been alone too long, Ben replied, his voice steady despite the strain. You've forgotten what humans can achieve together. With a decisive gesture, Ben redirected the accumulated energy outward, not as an attack but as a sudden expansion of stabilized space-time. The effect was like dropping a stone in still water, ripples of coherent reality spreading outward, forcing Nega Ben's corrupted dimensional influence backward. The dark entity hissed in frustration, his form destabilizing at the edges as his connection to Ben's timeline weakened. This resistance was unanticipated, but temporary. Leave now, Ben advised, maintaining the expanding field of stabilized reality. Return to your own timeline and reconsider your approach. Next time, try asking for help instead of taking what isn't freely given. Nega Ben's form began retracting toward the dimensional rift, his power insufficient to maintain presence against Ben's unexpectedly effective defense. This encounter is merely the first, he warned, voice fading as he retreated. I will understand your integration. I will achieve completion. With those ominous words, he vanished back through the vortex, which contracted rapidly until only a small, pulsant G anomaly remained where the massive rift had been. Ben exhaled slowly, letting his cosmic energy dissipate gradually rather than cutting it off suddenly. The fracture lines in reality around them remained, however, dozens of tiny rifts glistening like crystal spiderwebs in the air. That was, Kevin began, struggling for words. Effective, Rook supplied, though the dimensional damage appears persistent. Kai was already moving among the fractures, deploying smaller versions of her dimensional anchors at key juncture points. These rifts are stable but not closing naturally. They'll need to be sealed individually. The question is whether Nega Ben will return once he's regrouped, Gwen pointed out, maintaining mana shields around the more volatile fractures. He will, Ben stated with certainty, his connection to his alternate self having revealed more than Nega Ben had intended. He's desperate in his own way. The cosmic consciousness without human perspective is lonely beyond comprehension. Elena approached Ben, her specialized lenses still displaying nanite diagnostics. Your integration held, but only because you found a way to incorporate external support. The Nanite network has adapted to the experience, but we should run a full diagnostic. Later, Ben replied, gently touching one of the nearest fractures. It responded to his proximity, edges rippling like disturbed mercury. First, we need to address these rifts before they expand. If I may, came a new voice from behind them. They turned to see Professor Paradox stepping through one of his characteristic blue portals. Accompanied by a figure none of them had expected, a tall, stooped Galvan in ceremonial attire that marked him as one of Azimuth's senior colleagues. Professor Kronos, Azimuth identified him, having just arrived from the laboratory below. This is unexpected. Circumstances demand unconventional responses, the elderly Galvan replied, his voice carrying authority despite its age-thinned quality. The Chronosapian Guild sends me as emissary. The Chronosapians are involved now, Max asked, joining them on the roof. They have been monitoring the situation since the wave, Paradox explained. The temporal implications of Ben's transformation, and now the emergence of Nega Ben, have triggered protocols established after Maltruant's rebellion. Professor Kronos produced a device from within his robes, a crystalline sphere containing what appeared to be clockwork mechanisms of impossible intricacy. This is a temporal stasis generator. It was designed to coin temporal fractures following catastrophic timeline events. And you're offering it to us? Ben asked, understandably suspicious given the Chronosapians' historically complicated relationship with Earth. Not offering, insisting. The Galvan corrected. The multiversal damage is spreading exponentially. Your confrontation with your alternate self has accelerated the degradation. Paradox nodded gravely. He's right, Ben. These fractures may appear minor, but they're symptomatic of deeper instability in the timeline. Left unchecked, they could propagate retroactively. Meaning what, exactly? Kevin demanded. Meaning, Azimuth explained with unusual patience, that the damage could spread backward through time, potentially unraveling causality itself. That sounds bad, Ben acknowledged, studying the Chronosapian device with new interest. How does it work? It generates a localized field of temporal constancy, Professor Kronos explained. Essentially freezing the time-space continuum in its current state, preventing further degradation while allowing for repairs. Like putting the patient in stasis while preparing for surgery, Elena suggested. A crude but essentially accurate analogy. The Galvan agreed. Ben looked to Azimuth. Can we trust this? The creator of the Omnitrix studied his colleague carefully before responding. Kronos has always been more pragmatic than ideological. If the Chronosapian Guild is concerned enough to offer assistance, the situation is genuinely dire. The device has limitations, Professor Kronos added. It will stabilize the immediate fractures but cannot prevent new ones from forming should another inter-timeline incursion occur. In other words, it buys us time but doesn't solve the fundamental problem, Gwen summarized. Precisely. Paradox confirmed. And time is what we need most at present. After a moment's consideration, Ben nodded. All right, let's do it. Professor Kronos activated the Devi CE with a complex sequence of adjustments. The crystalline sphere began rotating internally, its clockwork components shifting into new configurations as it emitted a soft, golden light. He placed it carefully in the center of the rooftop, then stepped back as the light expanded outward in concentric waves. When the light touched the fractures in reality, they froze, not healing, but no longer spreading either. The golden energy continued outward, presumably affecting similar fractures throughout Bellwood and beyond. The field will extend approximately 20 kilometers in all directions, Professor Kronos explained. Sufficient to encompass all fractures caused by the recent confrontation. And how long will it last? Ben asked. Approximately 72 hours at current power levels, the Galvan replied. After which the fractures will resume their natural progression unless permanently repaired. So we have 3 days to figure out a more permanent solution, Max concluded. Actually, we may have less time than that, Paradox cautioned, checking his pocket watch with unusual concern. The temporal stasis affects only this local region of space-time. Nega Ben remains free to act elsewhere in the multiverse. And he's not the only one taking notice of recent events, came a new voice from above them. All eyes turned upward to see a swirling portal of blue-white energy forming, different from both Paradox's time portals and the dimensional rift Nega Ben had created. From this new aperture descended a figure wreathed in arcane energies, her silver hair and ornate robes marking her as someone of significant mystical standing. Charmcaster. Gwen identified her with evident surprise. The sorceress landed gracefully on the rooftop, her expression uncharacteristically grave. Not exactly a social call, Gwendolyn. The magical community is in uproar. The barriers between dimensions are weakening globally. We're aware of the situation, Max replied cautiously. Knowing Charmcaster's complicated history with their group. Aware but not comprehending its full scope, she countered, her attention focusing on Ben. Your transformation has resonated through the magical realms in ways you can't imagine. Ancient entities are awakening, sensing opportunity in the weakening barriers. What kind of entities? Kai asked, her archaeological background making her particularly attuned to such threats. The kind that were sealed away for good reason, Charmcaster answered grimly. Beings that existed before time had meaning, exiled to pocket dimensions when reality as we know it coalesced. Ben absorbed this new information with remarkable equanimity, his integrated consciousness better equipped to process existential threats. Why come to us with this warning? We haven't exactly been allies. Charmcaster's expression shifted, something like reluctant respect showing through her usual guarded demeanor. Because despite our differences, I don't want reality unraveled. And because, she hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with what she was about to admit. Because I need your help. Our help, Kevin repeated skeptically. My realm, Legerdemain, exists at a dimensional intersection point, Charmcaster explained. It's particularly vulnerable to the current instability. Already, portions are becoming untethered from established reality patterns. You're asking for Ben's assistance in stabilizing your dimension, Rook surmised. Not just Ben's, Charmcaster clarified, turning to Gwen. Your anodite abilities, combined with my knowledge of Legerdemain's magical infrastructure, might be sufficient to reinforce the critical boundary points. Gwen and Ben exchanged glances, years of partnership allowing for silent communication. If Legerdemain destabilizes, Gwen reasoned, the effects could cascade to connected dimensions, including Earth. Precisely, Charmcaster confirmed. Our mutual survival depends on maintaining dimensional integrity. How convenient that your self-interest aligns with saving multiple realities, Kevin commented dryly. Charmcaster's eyes flashed dangerously. Mock if you must, Levin, but the situation is genuine. Legerdemain's libraries contain arcane knowledge dating back to reality's formation, knowledge that might help address the broader crisis. She's telling the truth, Ben stated with quiet certainty, his enhanced perception allowing him to sense deception, or its absence. And she's right about the strategic value of stabilizing Legerdemain. Professor Paradox had been uncharacteristically quiet during this exchange, but now he stepped forward. I believe we must divide our efforts. The threats we face are manifesting across multiple fronts simultaneously. Agreed, Max nodded. We need to establish priority targets and allocate resources accordingly. I'll go to Legerdemain with Charmcaster, Gwen volunteered. My anodite abilities will be most effective there. I'm going with you, Kevin stated firmly, his tone making clear this wasn't up for debate. Actually, Paradox interjected gently, your matter absorption abilities might be more useful elsewhere, Kevin. Where elsewhere? Kevin demanded. The null void, Paradox replied. The dimensional instability is causing particular disruption there, releasing creatures and entities that were securely contained. Great, Kevin muttered, though his expression showed he recognized the logic. Back to everyone's favorite pocket dimension. You won't go alone, Rook assured him. The plumbers have already dispatched a containment team. But they require additional support. While they discussed the null void situation, Elena had moved closer to Ben, her diagnostic lenses showing her something concerning about his condition. The nanite network is showing strain patterns from your confrontation with Nega Ben, she reported quietly. We need to recalibrate the integration parameters. How long will that take? Ben asked. Ideally, several hours of careful adjustment, Elena replied. But given everything that's happening, I can implement a temporary reinforcement in about 20 minutes. Do it, Ben decided. We can use the laboratory below. Professor Kronos, who had been consulting with Azimuth in hushed tones, approached them. Before you disperse to your various assignments, there is another matter requiring attention. What now? Kevin asked wearily. The chronosepian wave that precipitated these events was not a natural phenomenon, nor was it merely Maltruant's technology, the elderly Galvan stated. Evidence suggests it was deliberately modified to create precisely these conditions. This revelation sent a chill through the group. You're saying someone engineered all of this? Max demanded. To what end? That remains unclear, Professor Kronos admitted. But the level of temporal engineering required suggests involvement from a being with intimate knowledge of chronodynamics. Maltruant himself, Rook suggested. Possibly, Paradox acknowledged. Though he remains securely contained in my personal timeline. Unless a version from another timeline has found a way through the weakening barriers, Azimuth pointed out grimly. Ben absorbed this concerning theory, his mind already racing through implications and contingencies. So we're potentially dealing with Nega Ben. Ancient entities awakening as the dimensional barriers weaken, null void escapees, legerdemain destabilizing, and possibly Maltruant or someone with similar capability. Orchestrating events from behind the scenes. An accurate summary, Paradox confirmed with a slight smile. Though I would have phrased it less dismally. All right, Ben decided, natural letters. It asserting itself despite the cosmic power now at his disposal. We divide and conquer. Gwen and Charmcaster to legerdemain. Kevin and Rook to the null void. Grandpa coordinates from Plumber HQ with Azimuth and Professor Kronos. Paradox does whatever Paradox does. A fair assessment of my role, the time traveler acknowledged with amusement. What about me? Kai asked. My dimensional ANC. Or could be useful in any of these scenarios. Ben considered this. Stay with Elena and me for now. Once my nanite network is stabilized, we'll determine where your technology will have the most impact. And me? Eunice inquired, her adaptive form having remained quietly observant through much of the discussion. Your unique ability to interface with multiple technological systems makes you valuable as a mobile asset. Ben replied after brief consideration. For now, assist Elena with the nanite recalibration, then be prepared to deploy wherever the situation becomes most critical. With assignments clarified, the team began preparations for their respective missions. As they dispersed, Serena's externalized form drifted closer to Ben, her luminous features showing concern. You made no mention of the Celestial Council, she noted quietly. They will have noticed Nega Ben's incursion. I know, Ben acknowledged. I'm counting on their policy of observation over intervention to give us time to address these immediate threats. A risky assumption, Bellicus warned from Ben's other side. The Council's patience has limits, particularly regarding interdimensional instability. True, Ben conceded, but I'm hoping our proactive approach demonstrates that intervention isn't necessary. As the others departed for their assignments, Ben, Elena, Kai, and Eunice returned to the laboratory below. The enhanced stabilization chamber awaited, its systems already adapting based on data gathered during Ben's confrontation with Nega Ben. The nanite network configuration needs significant refinement, Elena explained, gesturing for Ben to enter the chamber. Your integration held under stress, but the pattern suggests potential failure points if subjected to similar attacks in future. So basically, I got lucky, Ben summarized as he settled into the chamber's central seat. Luck, determination, and unexpected support from external energy sources, Elena corrected, activating the nanite field. Your instinct to draw on your friend's energies was inspired. It wasn't calculated, Ben admitted as the nanite field enveloped him. It was just human. Elena's expression softened slightly, which is precisely why your integration succeeds where Nega Ben's fails. You approach cosmic power through human perspective rather than abandoning that perspective for power's sake. While Elena began the recalibration process, Kai established a perimeter of dimensional anchors around the laboratory. These should help isolate you from further incursions while the nanite work proceeds. She explained. After seeing Nega Ben's attack pattern, I've modified the field frequencies for better resistance. Your technology is remarkably advanced, Eunice observed, studying the anchors with professional interest. The quantum harmonics bear similarities to Galvan dimensional theory but with unique adaptations. Most of my equipment is based on artifacts I've documented at interdimensional nexus points throughout Earth's history, Kai explained. Ancient civilizations encountered dimensional phenomena long before modern science had terminology for it. As they worked, Ben remained silent. His consciousness partially expanded beyond the laboratory. He could sense the fractures in reality throughout Bellwood, held in stasis by the Chronosopian device. But still present like scars in the fabric of existence. Beyond them, he perceived distant ripples of disturbance, legerdemain's deteriorating boundaries, the null void's increasing turbulence, and something else, something watching. There, Elena announced after 20 intense minutes of work. The reinforcement is complete, not perfect, but significantly more resilient than before. The nanite field dissipated, and Ben rose from the chamber, his form now radiating a more controlled energy. The cosmic patterns beneath his skin flowed in orderly configurations rather than erratic pulses. How do you feel? Kai asked, studying him with both professional and personal interest. More coherent, Ben replied. Like the different aspects of my consciousness are communicating more efficiently. The new nanite protocols establish better translation parameters between human and celestial sapien thought patterns, Eunice explained. Think of it as an enhanced interface rather than mere stabilization. Before Ben could respond, a subtle vibration ran through the laboratory, not physical, but something more fundamental. The dimensional anchors Kai had deployed flashed warning indicators simultaneously. Something's coming through, Kai warned, rushing to her equipment. But it's not like Nega Ben's signature. Reality rippled near the center of the laboratory, distorting like heat waves above sun-baked asphalt. The air split along an invisible seam, and through this newly formed aperture stepped Professor Paradox, but not the one who had been with them minutes earlier. This version appeared haggard, his normally immaculate clothing torn and stained with substances none of them could identify. "Oh good, I've found you," this Paradox said, his voice lacking its usual measured calm. "Listen carefully, we have very little time. You're not our Paradox," Ben observed immediately, his cosmic awareness detecting subtle quantum differences. Astute observation. I come from a tangent timeline, one where things have gone poorly. The alternate Paradox glanced nervously at the dimensional tear through which he'd arrived, which remained open behind him. In my reality, Ega Ben succeeded in extracting what he sought from your consciousness. The results were catastrophic. How catastrophic? Elena asked. Total dimensional collapse cascading across 27 adjacent timelines, he answered grimly. I've been jumping between fractured realities trying to find one where intervention might still prevent the worst outcomes. What kind of intervention? Ben asked, already suspecting he wouldn't like the answer. The alternate Paradox reached into his tattered coat and removed a device unlike anything they'd seen before, a crystalline structure surrounding W. Had appeared to be a miniaturized black hole, contained within impossible geometries. This is a quantum nullifier, he explained. Designed by a coalition of the greatest minds across multiple realities. It's capable of severing the connection between your human and celestial sapien aspects permanently. Severing, Kai repeated, alarm evident in her voice. You mean undoing the convergence? Precisely, the alternate Paradox confirmed, reverting Ben to his human state and forcing the celestial sapien aspect back into the Omnitrix as Alien X. That would kill me, Ben stated with absolute certainty. The convergence is irreversible. Bellicus and Serena made that clear from the beginning. Not kill, the alternate Paradox corrected. Transform. You would survive as human Ben Tennyson. With memories of your cosmic state but without its powers or perspective. And the celestial sapien aspect? Eunice asked, her analytical mind immediately identifying the logical gap. Would return to its original state within the Omnitrix, he answered, though something in his tone suggested he wasn't being entirely forthcoming. Ben studied the device, his enhanced perception allowing him to see beyond its physical structure to the conceptual principles underlying its design. This wouldn't just separate us, he realized aloud. It would erase the celestial Sapian consciousness entirely, using my human aspect as a template to overwrite the cosmic awareness. The alternate paradox's expression hardened. Sometimes sacrifices must be made for the greater good. I've witnessed the alternative, endless realities consumed because one being tried to exist in two states simultaneously. Or because someone tried to force separation after integration was complete, Elena countered, her scientific understanding allowing her to grasp the device's likely consequences. The nanite network doesn't just stabilize Ben's dual nature, it's become integral to his existence. Removing it would be like removing a person's nervous system and expecting the body to function. The alternate paradox's patience visibly thinned. You cannot comprehend the devastation I've witnessed. Entire universes, reduced to quantum foam because of the instability Ben's transformation has introduced to the multiverse. Or because of attempts to reverse that transformation, Kai suggested, her expression thawed. HTFUL as she studied both the device and the alternate paradox. Your solution seems suspiciously specific. Something shifted in the alternate paradox's demeanor, subtle but noticeable to Ben's enhanced perception. A flicker of calculation replacing desperation, of agenda replacing warning. You're not paradox, Ben stated with sudden certainty. The figure smiled, the expression unnervingly wrong on the familiar face. Perceptive, though not quickly enough. With blinding speed, he lunged forward, thrusting the quantum nullifier toward Ben's chest. Ben reacted instinctively, cosmic energy flaring around him in protective layers. The device made contact with this energy field and emitted a high-pitched whine as its internal mechanisms engaged, not with Ben's consciousness directly, but with his defensive field. Instead of nullifying Ben's convergence, however, the device began to fracture, cracks spreading across its crystalline surface as it encountered resistance it hadn't been designed to overcome. Impossible, the false paradox hissed, his form beginning to waver like a poorly tuned television signal. The calculations were precise. Your calculations didn't account for the nanite network, Elena pointed out with professional satisfaction. Or for Ben's friends. Kai had already activated her dimensional anchors to full capacity, the device is now generating a containment field around the intruder. Eunice's adaptive form had reconfigured to emit counter frequencies that disrupted whatever technology was maintaining the paradox disguise. Under this combined assault, the imposter's appearance destabilized completely, revealing the entity beneath, a being composed of shifting mathematical patterns similar to the interdimensional entities from the Tokyo Rift, but with distinct differences suggesting greater complexity and purpose. Chronivore, Bellicus identified it, his externalized form manifesting with unusual intensity. A parasite that feeds on temporal anomalies. And apparently sees me as the ultimate feast, Ben added, maintaining his defensive field as the creature struggled against Kai's containment. Not just food, Serena's aspect clarified, manifesting beside Bellicus. Your convergence represents something unprecedented, a potential source of evolutionary advancement for its kind. The chronivore abandoned pretense, its form expanded. To fill the containment field as it shifted to its natural state, a writhing mass of temporal energy with multiple appendages extending in directions that hurt the human mind to perceive. The nullifier was merely pretext. It communicated in mathematical pulses that translated imperfectly to speech. Your dissolution would release quantum potential for harvesting. So you're not trying to save reality, you're trying to feast on my energy when I'm destabilized, Ben summarized, cosmic patterns intensifying beneath his skin as he prepared to counter this unexpected threat. Convergence NT represents unprecedented evolutionary potential, the chronivore continued, its containment already beginning to fail as it drew power from the surrounding temporal stasis field. Dissolution and absorption optimizes benefit. I'm getting really tired of beings trying to absorb, extract, or otherwise help themselves to my existence, Ben remarked with surprising calm given the circumstances. First nega Ben, now you. Do I have a cosmic, all-you-can-eat, sign I'm not aware of? The chronovore's response was to shatter Kai's containment field with a surge of temporal energy, sending her staggering backward as her equipment overloaded. Simultaneously, it launched multiple appendages toward Ben, each moving through spacetime at different rates, some arriving before they appeared to launch. Others bending around conventional physics to approach from impossible angles. Ben responded with newfound mastery of his integrated abilities. Rather than generating raw power, he created precise counter frequencies to each temporal attack, his human intuition and cosmic awareness working in perfect harmony to anticipate the Chronovore's multidimensional assault. Elena, get Kai and Eunice out of here, Ben called out, creating a buffer zone of stabilized spacetime around himself to contain the bottle's effects. We're not leaving you, Elena countered, already deploying specialized Nani Tays designed to interface with temporal energy. She's right, Kai added, recovering quickly and activating secondary dimensional anchors from her pack. That thing wants to isolate you. Together we have a better chance. The Chronovore screeched in mathematical harmonics as its attacks met unexpectedly coordinated resistance. It attempted to open a temporal rift behind itself, an escape route, on. Lee defined Eunice's adaptive form had reconfigured to generate precisely the counter frequencies needed to prevent temporal manipulation in that sector. Fascinating adaptation, the Chronovore acknowledged, its communication becoming more coherent as it analyzed their defensive patterns. Your support systems are more integrated than anticipated. That's what happens when you work with friends instead of trying to eat them. Ben replied, gradually compressing the stabilized zone around the entity, limiting its freedom of movement. Recognizing its disadvantageous position, the Chronovore shifted tactics. Instead of continuing its direct assault on Ben, it generated a temporal pulse that expanded outward in all directions simultaneously, not an attack, but a signal. Reinforcements, Kai realized, her instruments detecting response patterns from beyond the laboratory. It's calling others of its kind. Not just calling them, Elena added grimly, her specialized lenses showing her something the others couldn't yet see. It's destabilizing the Chronosopian stasis field. The fractures are beginning to reactivate. Outside the laboratory, alarms began blaring as Plummer monitored. G systems detected multiple dimensional breaches occurring simultaneously throughout Bellwood. The carefully contained fractures from Nega Ben's earlier incursion were expanding once more, creating entry points for other entities. We need to neutralize it quickly, Ben decided, gathering cosmic energy for a concentrated effort. Kai, can your anchors generate a complete dimensional isolation field? Theoretically, she confirmed, already reconfiguring her equipment, but it would trap us in here with that thing. Perfect, Ben replied with unexpected confidence. That's exactly what I want. Understanding dawned in Elena's expression. You're going to create a controlled implosion. Precisely, Ben confirmed. Collapse the dimensional boundaries around the Chronovore while protecting us within a secondary containment field. The calculations would need to be exact, Eunice warned, her adaptive systems already processing the complex mathematics involved. A miscalculation Sue. LD collapse this entire section of spacetime. Then we won't miscalculate, Ben stated simply. Elena, I need the nanite network at maximum efficiency. Kai, prepare the isolation field but don't activate until my signal. Eunice, maintain counter frequencies to prevent additional incursions. As they moved with practiced efficiency to implement this plan, the Chronovore's mathematical patterns shifted into what might have been the equivalent of laughter. Your strategy is apparent and flawed. Chronovores exist beyond conventional dimensionality. I'm counting on that, Ben replied cryptically. Cosmic energy gathering around his hands in complex geometric patterns. The entity's confidence faltered slightly as it recognized something unexpected in Ben's approach. What are you doing? Creating something new, Ben answered. With careful precision, he began generating a specialized field unlike anything he had attempted before, not a simple containment barrier or energy attack, but a reconfiguration of local reality itself. The nanite network is at optimal configuration, Elena reported, her fingers dancing across holographic controls. Integration matrix at 100% efficiency. Dimensional isolation ready on your mark, Kai added, her anchors positioned in perfect symmetry around the laboratory. Counter frequencies stable and adaptive, Eunice confirmed, our form having configured into an optimal interface between their various systems. The Chronovore sensed the danger too late. It attempted to break free, temporal appendages lashing out with increasing desperation. You cannot contain a Chronovore with conventional methods. Who said anything about conventional? Ben replied, completing his complex manipulation of cosmic energy. Now, Kai, She activated the dimensional isolation field, and the laboratory effectively vanished from normal space-time, existing in its own pocket dimension temporarily disconnected from the surrounding universe. Within this isolated bubble, Ben completed his work, transforming the very nature of dimensionality around the chronivore. Rather than attempting to contain or destroy the entity, he reconstructed the dimensional parameters of their isolated space, creating a recursive loop that the chronivore itself became an integral part of, essentially turning the predator into the boundaries of its own prison. The entity shrieked in mathematical horror as it realized what was happening. This is impossible. Chronovores cannot be bound to singular dimensional constructs. Consider this a first, Ben replied, completing the transformation with a final gesture that locked the recursive pattern in place. The chronovore's form contracted into itself, becoming simultaneously the prisoner and the prison, a self-containing paradox that could neither escape nor fully exist. As the process completed, Ben carefully unwound Kai's isolation field, reintegrating their laboratory with normal space-time. Where the chronivore had been, now floated a small crystalline object roughly the size of a tennis ball, a perfect hyperdimensional prison containing an entity that existed beyond conventional dimensions. Ben plucked it from the air, studying the mathematical patterns visible within its crystalline structure. That should hold it. What exactly did you do? Elena asked, fascinated despite her exhaustion. I created a recursive dimensional loop, Ben explained. The chronivore exists as both prisoner and prison, continually trying to escape itself, which is mathematically impossible. Ingenious, Eunice acknowledged. Though I suspect temporary. Nothing's permanent in a multiverse experiencing dimensional instability, Ben agreed. But it should hold long enough for us to address the more immediate problems it created. Outside, the alarms continued blaring as the fractures throughout Bellwood expanded without the Chronosapian stasis field to contain them. Through the laboratory windows, they could see reality literally cracking along invisible fault lines, creating prismatic distortions in the air above the city. The stasis field has completely collapsed, Kai confirmed, checking readings from her equipment. And my sensors are detecting multiple incursions already in progress. Plumber teams are responding, but they're outnumbered and outmatched, Elena added, accessing communications channels through her nanite interface. These entities aren't just random dimensional travelers, they're coordinated, almost like an invasion force. Ben moved to the window, his enhanced perception allowing him to see patterns in what would appear as chaos to normal human senses. Not almost, he corrected grimly. Exactly like an invasion force. The chronivore was a scout, perhaps an advance agent testing our defenses. For whom? Kai asked. Before Ben could answer, the laboratory door slid open to admit Magister Tennyson, his expression grave but composed. Ben, we have a situation. Multiple situations, actually. Quote, I know, Grandpa, Ben acknowledged. The fractures are expanding, and we've got interdimensional visitors taking advantage. That's not all, Max replied. We've lost contact with both teams, Gwen and Charmcaster in Legerdemain, and Kevin and Rook in the Null Void. Communications cut off simultaneously approximately 3 minutes ago. The timing aligned perfectly with the chronovore's defeat and the collapse of the stasis field. Not a coincidence, Ben stated with certainty. Definitely not, Max agreed. And there's more. The Plumber Deep Space Monitoring Network has detected unusual activity near Saturn. A fleet of unknown configuration has just emerged from what appears to be a dimensional rift in the planet's rings. Saturn, Elena repeated with obvious confusion. That makes no strategic sense for an invasion force. Unless they're not headed toward Earth, Ben realized, his cosmic awareness allowing him to perceive connections others might miss. They're positioning themselves at a specific dimensional nexus point. Why Saturn specifically? Kai wondered. Because of Chronos, Ben answered, the pieces suddenly falling in to place in his integrated consciousness. The Chronosapian homeworld exists in a pocket dimension accessible only through specific coordinates in space-time, one of which aligns with Saturn's position in our solar system. Max nodded, unsurprised by Ben's knowledge. That's the current theory at Plumber HQ. If someone wanted to access or perhaps attack the Chronosapian civilization directly, they'd need to go through that nexus point, Ben finished. And with the dimensional barriers weakening across the board, it's more vulnerable than ever. So we're facing coordinated attacks on multiple fronts, Elena summarized. Earth, Legerdemain, the Null Void, and potentially the Chronosopian homeworld. Divide and conquer. Their strategy, not ours this time, Ben observed. They're stretching our resources deliberately. Which suggests they know our capabilities and limitations, Max added. This isn't random opportunism, it's a calculated campaign. The implications hung heavily in the air. Someone or something was orchestrating these events with intimate knowledge of Earth's defenders, dimensional mechanics, and cosmic politics. We need to prioritize, Ben decided after a moment's consideration. Rescue our teams first, then address the broader incursions. Agreed, Max nodded. But how do we proceed when communications are down? Ben turned to Elena, an idea forming. Your nanites can establish quantum entanglement across dimensional boundaries, right? That's how you've maintained connection with the network inside me despite dimensional interference. Theoretically, yes, Elena confirmed. But I'd need something connected to our target dimensions as a receiver, something already there that the nanites could interface with. Like Gwen's mana field or Kevin's Osmosian energy signature. Ben suggested. Or Rook's proto-tool. Possible, Elena acknowledged, mind already racing through implementation details. But establishing the initial connection would require significant energy and precise dimensional coordinates. Ben smiled slightly. Energy I can provide. And as for coordinates, he turned to Kai. Your anchors record dimensional signatures of places they've been deployed. Right, yes, Kai confirmed, already understanding where he was heading. And I've previously deployed prototypes in both Legerdemain and the Null Void during research expeditions. Perfect. Ben nodded. Eunice, can your adaptive systems help interface between Elena's nanites and Kai's dimensional data? Absolutely, Eunice confirmed. The integration should be straightforward given my current configuration. Then let's get started, Ben decided. Grandpa, can you coordinate the plumber response to the incursions here on Earth while we focus on rescuing our teams? Already on it, Max assured him. Azimuth and Professor Kronos are working on reconstructing the stasis field technology to help contain the expanding fractures. They'll need time, though. Time we'll have to create. Ben acknowledged. Let's move quickly. As they began preparations for the rescue operation, the externalized aspects of Bellicus and Serena, who had remained uncharacteristically quiet during the Chronivore confrontation, drifted closer to Ben. Your strategy against the Chronivore was unexpected, Bellicus noted, something like grudging approval in his tone. Creating a prison from the prisoner itself requires conceptual thinking beyond typical human parameters. Yet implemented with distinctly human intuition, Serena added. The integration of your aspects continues to evolve in fascinating ways. I'm learning as I go, Ben admitted quietly. Finding the balance between human perspective and cosmic awareness. A balance Nega Ben failed to achieve, Serena observed. Which makes you uniquely dangerous to whatever force is orchestrating these events. You believe these coordinated attacks target Ben specifically, Max surmised, having overheard this exchange. It seems probable, Bellicus confirmed. The Chronivore's attempt to destabilize Ben's integration, the simultaneous targeting of his closest allies, the strategic posit. Ioning to stretch his attention across multiple dimensions, these suggest an entity that perceives the convergence as a primary threat. Or a primary opportunity, Serena countered. Remember the CHR. Onivore spoke of evolutionary potential, perhaps what some see as threat, others view as resource. Ben considered these perspectives as Elena, Kai, and Eunice worked to establish the cross-dimensional communication system. Either way, we need to find out who's behind this. And I have a feeling rescuing our friends will lead us straight to them. Within 30 minutes, the integrated system was ready. Elena's specialized nanites programmed with Kai's dimensional coordinates and enhanced by Eunice's adaptive interface technology. The setup resembled a miniature version of the stabilization chamber, modified to project quantum entanglement fields instead of containment energies. The system is ready, Elena announced. But establishing simultaneous connections to both Legerdemain and Null Void will require more energy than we can generate conventionally. Leave that to me, Ben replied, stepping into position at the center of the apparatus. Once the connections are established, we should be able to communicate briefly, Kai explained. But maintaining the bridges will be energy-intensive and unstable. Understood, Ben nodded. We make contact, assess their situations, and determine extraction priorities. With careful coordination, Ben channeled cosmic energy into the system while Elena directed the specialized nanites toward their dimensional targets. Kai monitored the dimensional coordinates, making micro-adjustments as necessary, while Eunice maintained the adaptive interface that allowed these disparate technologies to work together. The laboratory light dimmed as power redirected to the communication attempt. Reality around them thinned perceptibly as dimensional barriers were temporarily punctured with surgical precision. Then, with a sound like distant thunder, two shimmering portals materialized, one crackling with magical energies, the other rippling with the distinctive distortions of the null void. Connection established, Elena confirmed, her expression showing both professional satisfaction and personal relief. But highly unstable. We have perhaps 2 minutes at most. From the magical portal, Gwen's voice emerged, distorted but recognizable, under attack. Legerdemain is collapsing at its foundations. Charmcaster is attempting to stabilize the central nexus, but the attacking forces are static interrupted momentarily before her voice returned. Entities unlike anything I've encountered. They're absorbing magical energy directly from the realm's structure. Gwen, it's Ben, he called back. What's your status? Can you hold position for extraction? Negative, came her strained reply. We're trapped in the arcane archives. Charmcaster says it's the last stable section of the realm, but it's detaching from normal space-time. If we don't reconnect it soon, it'll drift into the dimensional void permanently. From the second portal, Kevin's voice cut through, accompanied by the distinctive sounds of combat, completely overrun. The null void projectors have been compromised. Something is systematically releasing every prisoner and creature ever contained here. Kevin, Ben called. What's your position? Inkarskan Central Security Hub, came Rook's precise reply. We are attempting to re-establish containment protocols, but the attacking forces have. His voice was interrupted by what sounded like an explosion before returning. Specifically targeting dimensional anchors and plumber technology. The identical strategies in vastly different dimensions confirmed Ben's suspicions. This is coordinated, he stated, looking to Max. They're deliberately destabilizing dimensional infrastructure at critical junction points. But why? Max wondered. What's the strategic advantage in collapsing stable dimensions? Perhaps they seek what exists between dimensions, Serena suggested, her externalized form studying the unstable portals with evident concern. Before they could discuss further, the communications began deteriorating rapidly, the portals flickering as their energy requirements exceeded even Ben's considerable output. We're losing the connections, Elena warned. 30 seconds at most. Gwen, Kevin, listen carefully, Ben called urgently. We're coming for extraction, but you need to mark your exact positions with energy signatures I can lock onto. Understood, Gwen confirmed. I'll create a mana beacon using the spell matrix Verdona taught me. We'll overload a null void projector, Kevin responded. Should create a distinctive energy spike you can home in on. Good, Ben acknowledged. Be ready in approximately. He glanced at Elena, who held up 3 fingers. 3 hours. We need to modify Kai's dimensional anchors for the extraction. As the portals began collapsing, final fragments of communication came through. Ben, there's something else, Gwen's voice called urgently. The entities attacking Legerdemain, they're being directed by someone who knows us. They specifically targeted the Alpha Rune first, almost like they knew. Her voice cut off as the magical portal imploded. From the null void portal, Rook's final words were equally concerning. Systematic targeting of all technology related to dimensional containment. They appear to be following a precise blueprint of vulnerabilities only someone with intimate knowledge of Plum Beer security protocols would possess. His transmission similarly terminated as the second portal collapsed. In the sudden silence that followed, Ben turned to Max. This confirms it. Whoever's Baheen. This has detailed knowledge of our operations, our allies, and our dimensional security protocols. An inside job, Max wondered grimly. Or someone who's been studying us very carefully for a very long time, Ben suggested. His integrated consciousness processing possibilities at accelerated rates. Either way, we need to move quickly. The attacks are escalating, and I doubt we have 3 hours before the situation deteriorates further. What do you propose? Max asked, Recognizing the strategic clarity in Ben's expression, we modify our approach, Ben decided. Instead of sequential rescue operations, we execute simultaneous extractions. How? Elena questioned. Even with your power, maintaining multiple dimensional breaches simultaneously would be extraordinarily difficult. Not if we use the fractures that are already forming, Ben explained. The dimensional barriers are weakening globally. With proper application of Kai's anchors and your nanite technology, we can temporarily stabilize specific fracture points and convert them into controlled extraction portals. Risky, Kai observed, but potentially viable with sufficient precision. And significantly more efficient than generating new dimensional breaches, Eunice added, her adaptive systems already modeling the concept. Ben nodded. I'll provide the energy and dimensional targeting. Elena's nanites will establish the quantum entanglement pathways. Kai's anchors will stabilize the selected fractures. Eunice will maintain adaptive interface between all systems. And me? Max asked. You Corden. Aid with plumber forces to secure our extraction points, Ben replied. We'll need defensive perimeters at each location to ensure our teams can return safely. As they began preparations for this ambitious rescue plan, Ben's attention briefly drifted to the small crystalline prison containing the chronivore. The mathematical patterns within had shifted, forming what appeared to be a simplified R-E presentation of a familiar symbol, one Ben recognized from ancient texts Azimuth had once shown him. That's not possible, he murmured, moving closer to examine the pattern. What is it? Elena asked, noticing his sudden intensity. The chronivore, Ben explained, holding up the crystalline prison. It's formed a pattern within its containment field, a symbol I've only seen in Azimuth's most restricted archives. The others gathered around, studying the intricate mathematical configuration that had formed within the crystal. To most, it appeared merely as an abstract pattern, but to Ben's enhanced perception, it clearly represented a specific concept. The Forge of Creation, he identified softly. The birthplace of celestial sapiens. Why would a chronivore display that symbol? Max wondered. Because Serena's externalized form interjected, her luminous features showing uncharacteristic alarm. The forge exists at the precise metaphysical junction point where time, space, and possibility converge, the ultimate dimensional nexus. And if someone wanted to destabilize all dimensions simultaneously, Bellicus began. They'd target the forge, Ben finished grimly. The sour CE point from which all reality ultimately derives. The implications were staggering. If the coordinated attacks on Legerdemain, the Null Void, Earth, and the Chronosapian homeworld were merely diversions or preliminary strikes, with the ultimate target being the Forge of Creation itself, we need to accelerate our timeline, Ben decided, newfound urgency in his voice. Rescue operations need to be completed within the hour. Not 3. That's barely enough time to modify the equipment, Elena protested. Then we work faster, Ben replied simply. Because if I'm right about what's happening, the entire multiverse is on a countdown clock, and we don't know how much time remains. Chapter 3 End. The end. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.